All right, I would like to call the meeting to order. This is the Litchfield Budget Committee. It is December 18th, 2014. And we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on our agenda is public input.
Well, I am here for the public input. My name is John York, 26 Bear Run Drive. I'm also a school board member. And while I'm not here representing the school board, I am representing my voice on the school board. And I'm here to talk about some of the reductions the Budget Committee has seen to make to the school budget, and my concern that the Budget Committee is making policy and for the school systems, and at the same time not giving voters an opportunity to weigh in on some decisions. So the first concern I have is the cut that you made for the LMS teachers, in which we had budgeted somewhere in the neighborhood of $7,800, $78,000 or $787,800 in a lease program. And I do remember seeing where the Budget Committee had made a decision that they did not like leases, and in this case they decided to remove that line item. The school board took a look at that cut, and look at that line item in the budget when we made the decision to make it part of that. The fact that we had computers that were 7 years old that the teachers are using. We also looked at the fact that $7,800 over 3 years was a lot better than $24,000 in the first year. It also gave us the opportunity at the end of the 3 years, if technology had changed enough, that our frontline teachers would have the opportunity to have their computers changed out as we continue through that process and return those computers. So by making that cut, you've removed that opportunity for the school board to do that process. And I believe in what I heard, it was a cut because the Budget Committee doesn't like too many, is not too enthralled with the leasing process. The next cut that I think is very, very difficult cut was that the school board had a conversation. This is on transportation, a $99,720 cut to our transportation budget. The school board had a conversation back in November in public session in which we have decided to start studying the use of our buses to see if there's some other options that can be had. We also know that there's a process in that. We have asked the bus company to undertake a analysis of that, of which they're in the process of doing. We don't know when that results will come, but we do expect it to come, shortly, sometime in January. The next issue with that is if they come back and say we can do this with 8 buses, is that we now have to determine how that's going to work. With the present scheduling of the 3 schools, it will not work. Kids in the high school will be catching a bus at 6 o'clock in the morning. Kids in the middle school will be catching a bus at 6:45. The only school that's probably safe is the elementary school, but they'll still be catching buses earlier and riding buses much longer. If this cut stays, we will not be able to have a discussion. We won't be able to ask the citizens to come in and provide their feedback as the school board goes about determining what schedules need to change in the schools for start times. We will change those schedules without any input of the teachers or without any input of the public, because we won't have the money. We will have to make those changes. We will change those schedules. And when the voters come and ask us why, we'll say because the money was cut from the budget, with no conversation, no realization to allow the process to occur. And some of the members of this committee talk about wanting the people to have the vote on this. In this case, 7 individuals made that decision, of which none of them have children in the school. So as a parent with kids in the school, I surely don't want my children on a bus for 45 minutes. So I think that cut is very unreasonable. Now, I expect you next year, if we don't have an answer to that, to hold our feet to the fire. But because we have a conversation and we start a process, it's not the Budgets Committee's responsibility to make that cut that forces that process. The voters may come when we hold an open meeting to talk to them about it, that they don't want to see those changes. The other thing that we have to do is that we have to change those. We have to make sure that it doesn't violate our LEA contract, and we have to make sure that that, again, can be done. 8 buses doesn't work under the existing system with Campbell and LMS start times. Flat out, they don't work. They start 3 minutes apart. One starts at 7:35 and the other starts at 7:38. So I don't know how you're going to get the students to the school unless they're standing. Now, Campbell opens at 7 and we let them come inside. LMS doesn't allow their students in until 7:30. There are students outside all winter long, standing outside for 10 or 15 minutes because their parents have dropped them off. Just think if they had to be dropped off at 6:45. So I strongly ask that this Budget Committee reconsider that cut. The next cut is the vocational cut. And that was a cut of transportation of $37,825. Again, the school board, seeing that issue, is again looking at trying to change how we do vocational ed. Presently, we're part of a group that in Campbell, Hudson, Nashua. That's part of our core group. We think there is a better program. We've looked at it. It's at Pinkerton. We think it'll work much better. But we have to pull ourselves out of a contract, out of an agreement. We have to be accepted into another agreement. If that all occurs, then you know what? We may have the opportunity to curtail those costs. We've also started looking at our policy, transportation policy, of kids being able to drive, whether or not we want to change that policy. Because at Pinkerton, a lot of the students that are in vocational drive themselves to that thing. That would alleviate that budget altogether. But as it stands now, that budget for this year's budget that we're in now is going to be about $120,000 by the end of the year, which is about $40,000 than we budgeted. Frank could probably give us the actual number. So by making that cut, again, our hands are being tied. What's going to happen is we're going to have to tell the students the money's not there, because you can't keep taking it from other places when you have other things you have to do. Health care and benefits. You know, I'm just as shocked as you guys that we have such a huge increase, except the voters voted for the salaries. They voted in the teacher's contract. So it's there, it's part of the salaries. The benefits, 7, I think it's 7% is the number on the benefits. As it stands right now in our budget today, we have $26,000 left to encumber in health and benefits. So one teacher comes in, one employee comes in and changes from no insurance to a family plan, for whatever the reason may be, that line item is fully spent in December, or fully encumbered against existing costs. Now, we've worked very hard over the last 5 years that I've been part of the school board and work with the Budget Committee to make and rail in a lot of the costs. And you know, health and benefits and salaries is just one of the things that drives our budget and is very frustrating to me also. But it is something that drives the budget. But we can't cut other things because of those two drivers. We still have to do the other items. We have to still do the other items that need to get done. Now, GMS, again, the Budget Committee made a decision to cut a teacher. Third grade teacher was a mistake by the school board. We accept that responsibility. That should have been removed. But the fourth grade teacher is, again, the board's decision. And we've been very good the last 2 or 3 years of reducing teachers. And we probably should get ourselves in trouble for not cutting the third grade teacher, but when we realized it, we figured it would be removed and we wouldn't have too much of problem with that because we expect that cut to have occurred. But the fourth grade teacher, again, using whatever the numbers that you used, doesn't fit the policy of the school board. And when you make cuts that impact and change our policies, I don't believe that's your role. I think you had an attorney in here this year to help you with that process. But I don't think that's the process for the Budget Committee. There are a few other things, but.
I don't want to cut you short, John, but we do have other people, so.
That's right.
I just want to
That's-
give you the full opportunity to complete your
Nope,
thoughts, but.
nope, I'm good. I'll let the next person step up.
All right, thank you. Further public input?
Sure. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to say all the same things John said, so I apologize up front. Derek Barker, 8 Simeon Lane. First off, I want to thank all of you. You obviously worked very, very hard on the budget. You weren't helped by the budget we gave you. It was a steep increase. I think, and I speak for myself only, not the rest of the board, but when we made that budget, we looked at a lot of different things. Grounds and building spending had been down for a long time. It was time to reinvest in the buildings. Curriculum spending had been down for a long time. It was time to invest in the curriculum. And then, of course, salaries and benefits was the teacher's contract. So that was a good chunk of the increase. It hurt, obviously, when the revenue projections came out after we approved the budget. I mean, I put it it was already a high budget. I'll acknowledge that. When the revenue projections came out, it was a much, much higher budget, much more unpalatable budget, I'll say. So I respect the work that all of you guys are doing to try and make this a little bit more digestible by the taxpayers. All that said, I'd just like to advocate for many of the few things that John also talked about. The first being the fourth grade teacher. As John had said, we're going through, and as the current second grade class goes through, we've been riffing a teacher as they go along because it's a much smaller class. I think it's 78 students. The current third grade, I believe, is 98 students. 99 students. So that's going to put 25 kids in each classroom next year if we keep it 4 fourth grade teachers, which is above our policy. It's also, I can't remember the state guidelines offhand, but I think it's 900 square feet for a classroom or 50 square feet per student. Our classrooms, as you all know, because you've all been here before, are much smaller than that 900 square feet. So it's tight. As far as the new computers for the LMS teachers, I'll echo what John said. We choose to do a lease because we've always done a lease that way because it kind of rolls the cost over 3 years. Let's just turn it over easier. Let's just keep our costs consistent. So I'm not sure why that's all of a sudden an issue. I'm not sure if you guys spoke to an attorney or are just interpreting the RSA, but it seems like we've been doing it forever. It seems like most towns have been doing it forever. So I'm pretty sure if the voters approve the budget, they're intrinsically approving the lease, and it's not a legal issue. The bus routes, again, everything that John had said, we're going to go about this very, very deliberately. Once we get the information back from first student, we'll hold public hearings, we'll hear from the teachers. We very, very well may have to negotiate with the LEA because there might be a change in their contract. So we have to go about that very purposely. However, it is also obviously our intention to follow that route. The last one I'll mention, I don't know if John mentioned it at all, I came in a second late, but is the GMS math tutor. Now I understand this is a tough one because there is the 2003 or 2002 article where it says all new positions have to be approved. This isn't a new position, it's actually an expanded position. The tutor is there already. The reason we chose to expand it, and Dr. Cochran could probably expand on it, was math's obviously been a touchy subject for the district. We've been focusing on it. It's much, much more effective to remediate in the earlier grades before the problem grows. So by putting a tutor at GMS to catch those early problems, it's helping us downstream. It's helping those kids not fall behind earlier on. It's probably a cheaper way, a more efficient way to address it. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Again, I respect all of you. You obviously have an enormous challenge in front of you. I agree with probably a lot of the reductions you've already done. It's just these 4 particular ones that hurt a little bit more than the others. So thank you.
Thank you. Further public input? All right, Hearing none, I'm going to move on to the agenda. Review and revision to the agenda. We do not have minutes, so we will be removing that. And the other night, we said we wanted to add a discussion about the default budget, so that will be under budget review. And the other thing I'm going to add is I have some comments that I want to make, and I will be making those next. So those are all the revisions I have to the agenda. All right, in terms of my comments, I watched the last night's school board meeting, and I was shocked, disappointed, and angry at the inaccurate, inflammatory way that the information was presented to the school board. I was very upset by what I saw in the information that was presented. And I just have a handful of them that just, stuck out to me. And this is both to the superintendent and to Mr. Bork, the representative to the school board. The question came up about the parking lot, and there was a question about the rationale for why it was reduced. And the rationale given was the budget committee does not want to make a decision, they want the citizens to. That was not the budget committee's rationale at all. It was a strategic reason. We are looking for ways to make sure the budget passes. So the strategic reason was that if there is a way that you can lower the bottom line and still get things passed, that it's the best interest of the school district to have that happen. So the fact that we were trying to avoid making a decision is not our rationale for suggesting that would be a good warrant article. In terms of, there was a comment about a reduction at the LMS staff, and that the budget committee was didn't have a problem with 28 or 29 students in a class. That is not accurate at all. The question was raised as to whether the staffing at the middle school could be reduced, and a reduction of a staff at 7th grade or 6th grade would mean one additional student in a class, which would mean 26 students. After a long discussion, it was determined that the information in our budget books was incorrect, and once the incorrect information was realized, the motion was withdrawn. It did not fail, as was stated last night. It was withdrawn once we had better information. And that is the gist of what happens at the budget table. We throw out ideas, we discuss them. When we get better information, we can make better decisions. The question about the math tutor, again, it's not a question of whether or not the budget committee supports the math tutor and the math initiatives. Absolutely, I think not a single person didn't agree that that was an important initiative and an important thing to go for. But again, yes, the warrant article that stated all new positions should be in a warrant article in the future, that was the exact reason this committee would support a warrant article of the math tutor, because it is important and part of your school initiatives. The phone system, the comment by one person was made that perhaps that would be something that the fund balance could fund. That was stated last night as that was the budget committee's stance, that it should be funded by the fund balance. It was not the budget committee's stance. One person made a comment, and in fact, there was not even a motion to reduce that line at all. So I think that was out of line to make that.
It wasn't the fund balance. It was Bill that made that thing, and it was out of the reserve money, and they could do it today, and then asked to refill that.
And that wasn't even a motion. The LMS fields, again, you've identified a problem, and this is the same thing that we went through with the town. You've identified a problem, but we were not presented with a plan of how to fix that problem. Cutting down trees and putting down grass seed is not a plan to fix that problem. The budget committee did not have enough information to support that initiative. Comments that the budget committee does not add money. Well, I think if you look at the town's budget, when the town presented us with information that indicated a line needed to be increased, the budget committee did increase the line. And I could go on and on and on, but I was very upset with the inaccurate information that was presented. It seems as though there was an attempt to create an adversarial relationship with the budget committee and the school board, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. Quite frankly, I really think we're all on the same page as trying to get the best budget that's going to pass, because if you get a default budget, all your initiatives go out the window, whether they're good ideas or not. So I also wanted just to add a little personal note, is I was on the school board for 15 years, and I support education very strongly. But when I was on the school board, I took a very sharp pencil to the school budget, and I made reductions that went pretty deep many times. And I would say personally that most of the reductions that we have made are reductions that I would have made as a school board member and supported it as a school board member. So I just want to say I was disappointed with what I saw from the meeting last night. And I don't think that you portrayed the budget committee fairly, or our actions fairly, or our rationale fairly. And that's that.
And to John's comment about not having kids in the school, just for the record, John, I have one grandchild at GMS and one at LMS. I don't have one currently at Campbell. She graduated last year, so, not supporting her education is not.
I would like to add to that same comment about the not having kids in school. In my opinion, that doesn't matter. Doing the right thing, you're trying to say if you have a kid in the school, you should spend more. That to me is not a logical argument about not having kids in the school. Decisions here are based upon rationale, facts, discussion, and thank you, Cindy, for the defense of what we do here. It needs to be done from time to time.
One last thing in terms of the bus issue. It was stated that we felt that 29 minutes on the bus was appropriate. That 29 minutes is a piece of information that came up after the meeting had adjourned. During the meeting, we were told 19 minutes. So 19, you watch the tape. That we were told that was the time on the bus. And that was where the comment was, 19 minutes isn't that bad. So it wasn't that there were 29 minutes, but the 19 minutes, if the first student on the bus is on there for 19 minutes, each successive student on the bus is then on the bus for less minutes. That was not part of last night's discussion. That's just my little editorial at the moment. But again, I felt like I couldn't believe that you had sat in these meetings with us and that was the way you portrayed the discussion that went on in these meetings. I think we have good discussions. They're not always going to be happy endings. But all right, correspondence. We received November enrollments. I received a letter from citizen Chris Piscucci, who is upset with some things that have been going on in terms of the school budget. We received some special education history from Bill, and we received the spreadsheet that had the reductions that have been made to date. Tonight we have received draft warrants. We have received memorandum revenue projections, and we have received draft default. And I do understand that these are draft numbers that we have here. Moving into budget review, first thing we have are warrants. So, Brian, do you want to, I think you said you just got these tonight, right? So I don't want to put you on the spot if it would be better.
Well, we went over them last evening.
Okay,
I just
okay.
wasn't aware that. Go over them. Again, I think as someone mentioned, there's still a work in progress right now. We can start with Article 1. Which can just simply that shall Litchfield District School raise and appropriate the operating budget, not including appropriations. Again, we don't have any dollar amounts at this time, so. Pardon me?
It's kind of standard.
Right. Article 2, shall Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $79,535.57 for the purpose of funding a full-time district technology database administrator position to support the new student information system.
So can we have a little more detail on what this
Is
involves?
this a replacement of the
No.
current?
No, this is a brand new position.
Brand new.
It's a brand new position.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, it is.
And you mentioned it, I think, in our first session, in brief comments. Could you just talk about what this is all about?
Yeah.
This position is for,
Which position would they, I'm sorry.
the warrant
The
article position.
the IT person.
We're hoping to migrate to a new student information system with a lot more functionality. Right now, our people are flat out, pretty much year-round. We have this summer months to do any major upgrades, and we have to start working on those early, which is why we actually up to 2 interns last year, just because it's such a short window. Even getting the one school's phone done in a year would be significant. But the main purpose is to support the new student information system. According to the state information, we should have about 5 people. We currently have 2. We have 3 people, 1 in each building, who are paid a small stipend to help support end users with logins, minor technical support, that sort of thing. It's for a district our size to have, in essence, we have Kyle as the director, and then we have 1 support person who does a lot of end user stuff. If you're going to move to a student information system, the level of functionality that will allow us to move everything into one platform, be able to operate as a parent portal where students can get real-time access to grades, be able to integrate a learning management system. There's a lot of database to be looked at, especially in the first year or 2. You have to set up the report card structure. It doesn't come preset with anything. You have to migrate the data over, which takes usually 2 or 3 rounds of exports and scrubbing and data checks. And some of that can be done by contract. Our thought was to try and get someone in so that rather than paying essentially the going rate in one of the 2 companies that we're looking at is $200 an hour. For $200 an hour for that work, we could pay somebody to get more of it done. So the position, I think, is needed. We have increased the amount of infrastructure in the last 3 or 4 years tremendously and not increased positions at all. We're trying to get ready for a one-to-one initiative. The student information system is a mechanism that we need to get here. We've increased the number of access points. We've increased the number of machines. We've increased the number of servers. And we're just at the point where we are stretched to the limit, and if we're going to add the functionality that I really believe that we need to take us to that next level, we're going to need an additional staff person.
And this will be on a permanent basis.
My expectation would be clearly for at least 2 years. Now, if you wanted to do more contract stuff, might you be less than that? Don't know. We've had really good conversations with the folks out at Bow. Bo's virtually identical size school, 1 middle school, 1 elementary school, 1 high school, and it's one of the 2 systems that we're looking at. They have 2 people, full-time, and so they have a database administrator, and who is also their director, and an assistant director who is their network administrator. Their support to what we do with our full-time position is 3 half-time positions in the schools. So they are able to function with 3.5 positions. Of that, 1.5 of them are relatively inexpensive tech people. Right now, we would be at 3 people, but they would be 3 full-time. So an IT director who would be a network administrator, a database management person who would also do some server stuff and network administration. We also need some phone expertise in there. And then the 3rd position, which is somebody who works in the schools, hands-on in the machines, helping teachers fix machines when they're not working, that sort of thing. So that was a good ballpark for us. In terms of district size, 3 buildings, they have the functionality that we're looking for, and we asked them if they can do it with that, and they said yes. They're tight, but they said they could do it. And we asked them if they could do it with fewer. They basically said, not a chance. And could be done.
So how did you come up with is this salary and benefits, this number here? How did you come up with this number?
Looked at current positions in and around known positions, and for example, Nashua, you can use the information on the Telegraph to look at what their people are making. The type of position that we're looking for, that number that we use for salary is actually lower than anything that Nashua was paying for the similar level. So we weren't going with above or even what we knew in terms of comparable positions. We went a little bit lower. So when we budget, I think we budgeted for about $52,000 salary, which isn't that much in the IT business. And then the standard budget is two-person healthcare, which is $12,000. And then you've got retirement system and FICA, which equates out to about somewhere around 72-ish, 73. What's the figure that we budgeted?
79.
79,535.
So we started about 54.
So if you don't know what system you're going to deploy, how do you know what to hire for database people? I mean, the skill set between different database backends. I mean, do you know what are the two systems you're looking at? I know a lot of the schools.
Campus and Follett Aspen, both relational databases, very, very similar in a lot of ways.
Aspen
The
X2.
biggest difference is core functionality is virtually the same. The differences between them have to do with the state of the learning management system. The learning management system in Aspen is relatively strong, it's solid, not spectacular, but very functional, and it's been there for a while. Infinite Campus is just developing theirs, but they're rolling it into the base price, as opposed to doing it as a premium product, and so there'll be no increase for it. They have a history of when they roll things in the premium price, they do it well, but we've only seen glimpses of what the product looks like. We've looked at the cost of support. They seem to be fairly equal. We did a site visit to Londonderry. We took about 10 people over to Londonderry, similar to Bo, had similar conversations with end users at their end, looked at the level of support that was being required in the buildings. It was about the same. Londonderry is a bigger district, but the total number of people reporting to the IT director over there is 13.
Londonderry has
They have
1,500 students in their high school.
Web person, they have a video piece, so it wasn't an apples to apples comparison. So I sat for about a half an hour with their database administrator, asked him what he does. I've known the IT director there for quite a while, so I looked at their functionality, mapped it to what we were doing, and asked him about the amount of support. And when I had that conversation with him, he indicated that a lot of some of his time was in the database management, some of it was in the programming side. They have to decide when, for example, they're getting a new report card in. Is it easier to pay the $200 to $400 it might take because they can do it in 2 hours, or for him to tie up X number of days? So we talked about the benefits and how much database capacity you need and at what cost. And so we've had those conversations. The two systems themselves are very, very similar in most ways.
And what does Bo use?
We'll use Infinite Campus.
Infinite Campus. I know Londonderry uses X2, Aspen X2.
So,
I'm familiar with Aspen because we implemented when I was in
Nashua.
Nashua.
so did you say that this position will be needed for 2 years?
A minimum 2 years.
A minimum
Depending on
of
where
2
we
years.
are. If we are in a serious one-to-one rollout in 2 years, I think it will continue to be needed. Because if you add the machines that we have now, and if we're in year 3 of an implementation, or even 2 of an implementation moving towards 3, that's another 300 plus machines, depending on how we support it, and Mr. Peebles, you and I have had these conversations, depending on how you support it, whether it's imaged and pushed out, or whether it's cheaper machines that are not imaged. One is more labor intensive in some ways, but the machines are cheaper in that way. So what's the overall best way to do it? How does the board roll it out? Do we do it in a lot of cases, things have been rolled out in ways that have not been especially thoughtful. It means that there's a lot of wastage of money, and you're not creating a flat cost of ownership. What we're looking at doing is not giving all 500 kids a laptop. We're looking at a potential pilot with freshman teachers and hopefully at least one class in each of the 4 core subject areas next year. That's that $15,000 in the budget for that we looked at the other night. That would mean that the teachers would get a year to get up and running and retool their courses to align with the technology used and the use. We piloted some devices last year in very small numbers, so we got some feedback. Some machines work well, some not so much. And so I think we have a better sense now of how to get the best bang for the buck as the market is changing at the same time. We'll do a little bit more of that. But a pilot next year, freshmen in 16, 17 is the plan, and then roll it up. So if the cost of a device is $400, do you ask parents to enter in a lease payment agreement? Is one of the ways to try and maintain caps. We've had conversations with that about the middle school as well. We have parents who'd be willing to pay. So instead of taxpayers paying, if it's like a lease purchase, your child gets this for, get it to grade 9 and they graduate with it, take it home, and it's theirs 24/7, 365. Sign the contract. If it's broken, you replace it, right? But it would mean that first year, if you charged $100 a year, the first year, the parents would pay for a quarter of that enrollment. The next year, you'd have two groups of students paying for the enrollment drops, and now $200 for 4. By the time you're near 4, it actually funds itself. So we're trying to do this in a way that's responsible. By the time you add that many machines, we'd probably be in a situation where we'll need that extra position full time. Are there some other savings that we might be able to have? Could we look at the Bow model and see if 3 part-time people would cost as much and give us a little bit more bang for our buck? Those are the things that we try to do when we do this. I mean, we put a lot of thought into that rollout model. Most people just bang down the money and say, here it is. Everybody gets a new laptop, and 4 years later, you have to do the whole thing over again. And the budget, that budget goes like that. It also isn't good if you do it that way for your PD for teachers. They need a year in advance to get their classes ready. Then you develop some expertise in a leadership pool. We actually have very strong technology people in terms of technology and use of technology in teaching now. But that means we can also spread out our PD and develop more internal PD as we go. So we're trying to be very thoughtful about this, but we don't know how much we can commit without that second person, quite honestly. If we're able to migrate over by using additional money to move the database, we moved over with about the same functionality we have now, but at least it'll work all the time. And then over time, try to add the functionality. But with that functionality, it's going to come with the human resource cost.
Any other questions? All right, that's warrant Article 2. Warrant Article 3.
Warrant Article 3. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $80,000 to enhance exterior video capacity, to include main entrance and perimeter of the buildings, new call box systems for visitors seeking entrance to the building during school hours, and exterior audio communication for emergency broadcasts at Griffin Memorial School, Litchfield Middle School, and Campbell High School.
All right, you want to explain a little bit how this differs from what we already have and why we need this?
Frank will
I'll
probably.
give you a very non-technical, we did have a proposal. This is actually phase 2 of what was completed this past summer. Past summer, we instituted a proximity entry system for all 3 schools, which ties back into a one computer software program for control. That's the swipe cards that you see everyone in the district using. Part of that first phase was also to rekey the entire 3 buildings exterior-wise, so that we have one main master key. Again, the intent was to control the perimeter, if you will, of the exterior of the buildings. Phase 2 is the proposal that's on the warrant now. We have a very antiquated, again, this is a non-technical explanation of what it is. I call it the buzz-in system. There's something more technical that they call it. It's when a visitor comes to the school and will hit the buzz. Some of the inherent issues there, GMS, if you have gone to GMS as a visitor, you buzz in, it's okay for you as an adult. But we get a lot of buzz-ins during the school day from the little kiddos, and the administrative assistants, all they see is a hand waving because they're trying to get in to use the bathroom. That's not good security. Those cameras are old. They're like a headlight that on a car after 15 years. They can barely see the picture of the person standing there. We have very poor lighting around the school as well. If you come into any one of the 3 buildings at night, there are areas of the building that are in total darkness. So this proposal also is to increase the exterior lighting of the buildings, to increase the capacity of the, again, lack of a technical term, buzz-in system. It'd be a new system that will tie in directly to, again, the new proximity software. So we're tying it all back to this new software that was purchased last year, and if Kyle was here, he'd give you a more technical IT approach to what we're trying to do. And the third piece is schools have certain protocol for emergency situations, and one is a reverse evacuation. We have a lockdown as well. Right now, with the schools in a lockdown situation, anybody that's outside approaching the building does not know that. There's no audible that the school is in lockdown. We've had drills here at the school because we lack that outside audible ability to communicate that to people on the outside. The school is in lockdown, do not approach the building. We've had, and there's a person sitting in this room right here during the drill, came into the building. She was out having lunch, didn't know we were in a lockdown situation, and that individual could have walked into a very serious situation if it were in fact an actual occurrence of a lockdown. So that is the three-prong approach, if you will. That will, and there's a fourth piece as well. This building here, we do have door and window sensors for nighttime security, so we can lock down the building and also put it on alarm. We do not have that at the other two schools. So this proposal will take care of all of those pieces.
How was the $80,000 developed?
It was a proposal.
You have a proposal?
Yeah, BNS Security Systems, which did the first phase, came in and gave us a proposal.
If this phase 2 is approved this year, is there a phase 3 next year, or would this complete the entire security process?
It's not the entire security process. That'll pretty much complete the exterior. In other words, the coming up from outside into the building. Excuse me, the next phase would be to look at controlling the interior of the building. Again, excuse me, the Recreation Department uses the building, GMS and LMS on weekends. Excuse me, we don't have any ability to close the building down. So the next phase would be look at, for us to compartmentalize the building's interior.
Meaning they could have access maybe to just the gym and not to the rest of the building? Is that what you mean by that?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, that's Article 3. Article 4?
Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to $50,000 to the Building and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of funding school capital investments, improvements, building maintenance and repair, and authorize the use of the amount in the June 30th unreserved fund balance available on July 1st of this year, and to designate the school board as agents to expend.
Okay.
Just a comment, a couple of comments. I know it's on Article 5, similar type thing, but you referenced when the reserve was established. You don't reference it in Article 4. There's a reason why you have different wording in that one. I don't know whether you have to reference it or not, but it's just very inconsistent between them. And the reason I happen to notice it, because I know when we appropriated monies last year, it listed the reserve fund being established in 2003, I think, but in fact it wasn't. It was established the following year. It was voted down in 2003. One way or another, it ought to be consistent with the two of them, okay? My other comment is, I'm getting old, I guess. There was a comment made about taking care of the telephone system at GMS out of the reserve fund. Was that one of the things that was brought up tonight?
That was one of the, yeah.
Just to set the record straight, I suggested that you might want to use that in lieu of having an operating budget as a means of reducing money in the operating budget to make it much easier to pass the operating budget. And I said, it's up to you guys to decide whether you want to do it. There was no intent to cut it at all. And if that was the message that got across, that is not what the situation was at all. Okay, at all.
No, it wasn't mentioned, I never mentioned that you were gonna cut it.
I'm just, I don't know what was said, and I just want to make these folks understand that wasn't what the situation was at all. So, bottom line, do you want to add another $50,000, bring it up to $100,000?
Yeah, there's already 50,000, or approximately 50,000 in that account right now, so this will bring it up to 100,000.
Correct.
Is there a reason for that? Why are we increasing it from 50 to 100,000?
Don't ask me.
Because of the cost of a possible major repair, such as, well, the phone system alone would be $30,000 if it were to fail.
Less than 100 and less than 50.
I understand, but then you get a boiler that goes. It's, $50,000 doesn't go far as far as major repairs in the 3 schools.
And this fund was established in 2004 and has been used once. And as I said, didn't have to be used that time.
It's up to the school board to put it as they
Yeah,
wish.
yeah.
I just think the odds of 2
That-
catastrophic failures in 1 year is pretty low.
The one time it was used, that was for the fire panel, right, in LMS?
That's correct.
Yep, and that wiped out the fund.
In the other fund, the one for Article 5, we have a little over 100 in that one
Well,
now?
let's stick with Article 4.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we already,
No,
No,
I
stick with
went
it.
because of-
Stick with Article 4.
okay.
Anything else in Article 4?
Will Article 4 be worded such that people will know that there is currently money in that fund? Because reading this now, I would assume that the fund balance is empty and is being replenished.
You can't put the balance in the warrant article.
Well,
You
can
can
make
put it
ref-
in some narrative, but you can't, it's not,
Yeah.
it can't be embedded in the article itself.
Can't you make reference that one exists, though?
Or increasing the current fund balance from 50
It
to
can't be
100.
embedded in the warrant article.
Okay. I just think, if I'm a voter, I'm thinking, well, of course, there's currently 0 going to 50. It just, for clarification purposes, I would think that is better.
Actually, it could be embedded by saying add $50,000 to the existing $50,000.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah,
embedded.
DRA won't allow it, we tried it.
Okay.
I've tried it in the past, DRA
Why couldn't
won't.
you use the same language established in, right?
Well, it could still be empty.
You can put that it's an established account, but DRA will not allow, we tried it once and they wouldn't allow to have the balance in there because they felt that it somehow swayed the voters one way or the other.
It would.
Well, so they're right. So the DRA was right not to allow it.
But we'll just have to figure out how to add it in.
No, we would put a footnote, obviously, in the presentation and materials that we would hand out what the current balance of those 2 accounts are. Yeah, that's obviously something you'd want to put out there.
Okay, anything else in Article 4? Article 5?
Article 5, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to $100,000 to the Capital Reserve Fund for educationally disabled children established in 2004 and authorize the use of the amount from the June 30th unreserved fund balance available for transfer July 1st of this year.
Okay, you had a question, Chris?
Yeah, now, is that the one that currently has a hair over 100,000 in it already, right now? Okay.
I believe it's 106.
So then my request would be similar then to, that there's some note that explains that we're doubling the fund.
So my question is why you want to do it?
Mm.
At least this one makes reference that there isn't already a fund,
Well,
technically.
but it doesn't indicate that there is currently money in the fund.
Agreed.
There could be an empty fund.
Agree, but it's an improvement.
Right. But by raising it, we know what the costs are, but what this could probably do is help us establish a more realistic budget by having this fund available to us in case we incur a large cost.
How is that different what we're doing today?
Because then our budget could probably reflect a lower number.
You mean you might under budget what you thought you were going to spend? Because the budgets you've
That's
been
it.
getting have been reflecting a low number.
I think both of those, it's not uncommon, as you know, for a school district to have capital reserve funds. And those 2 areas are the most volatile areas of a school district budget, buildings and grounds and special ed expenditures. So to the extent, as you recall, last 2 years, I believe, the DRA came out with the ability of school districts, similar to what the towns have been able to do for quite a while, to sweep that 2.5% of the unassigned fund balance and keep that money in reserve, recognizing that there are those budgets, town and school, just do not encapsulate. We do not have, again, for instance, our buildings and maintenance budget pretty much is supplies and service contracts. We do not budget for events like we're dealing with right now, GMS, boils. And we're looking at potentially a substantial expense that could, in fact, take a good amount of the money. from the capital reserve fund. So operating budgets from school districts, those are the two areas that can be extremely sensitive.
But
Special ed, you
stay
get
on
one
this
person.
particular one, because we've had this fund since 2004 and never used it at $100,000, and we've always tried to have as tight a spend budget as we could. In fact, we reduced the request typically that you would use this money for, and you never had to use it. So I'm wondering why
Do they
you
use it
feel...
on the town side?
I'm sorry?
Do they use it on the town side?
No, we never had them until just recently.
Well,
Those are on new.
the capital reserve
That-
and the
I'm-
town.
I'm
Well, by
feeling-
comparison, Bill, I'm just trying to draw a comparison of the volatility. of the
There
budget.
is no comparison,
Oh, okay, of course.
because they can spend all they want on the fund balance, and you can't, obviously, because that's the law. But my problem with this one is that you're looking to add another $100,000 to a fund that has never been used, and I don't see where you would actually reduce what you would have been asking for, but this has really been sitting in there in anticipation of something that might come in extraordinary. And we've always been able to handle that without even touching this fund, this balance. And, you know, I'll come back again, you know, you're gonna be faced with a situation with a major problem with passing the operating budget. You start using the fund balance money up for these types of things, it's not gonna be there to reduce the tax rate when you set the tax rate in the fall. And I'll tell you, it's gonna really whack the people, unless you had a real reason why you had to do this, and I don't see in this particular one. I can understand what you're talking about, the maintenance, although I don't agree with it. This one, I don't understand at all, and because it has never been an issue.
Ray, did you have a comment?
Actually, Dr. Cochran had a comment before me.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, I can't remember if it was here or elsewhere, whether it was in the meeting or not, but I know we'd had conversations earlier about why don't we budget less conservatively with special education, and, you know, with that 106, and my response then was, you know, $106,000 wouldn't be a worst-case scenario for one child. And I've been in situations before where we've had two kids in the same family have moved in, both at about that. And you're right when you characterize this as saying you budget very conservatively in special education, and it's usually too high, and you usually send some money back. And my comment was, if that $106,000 fund could grow to, reserve fund could grow to $250,000, $300,000, then we could really, instead of, you know, budgeting for and allocating all that money and then giving it back, we could basically have that reserve, that excess, or that worst-case scenario set aside in a fund, and therefore budget far less conservatively, and it would tie up taxpayers' money only one time for that, as opposed to every year.
But the variable has been the tuition variable and the transportation variable.
Right.
That's been the variable.
Right.
And I will tell you, in all the years I sat on this committee reviewing budgets, I can probably think of maybe 2 years where in fact the tuition number has come in over and above what was in the budget, even taking into account that the budget committee made reductions in it. So honestly, I think you're overreaching here.
Well, I don't disagree with your rationale. It's just a matter of how safe we feel and where would we be able to go if things did break bad, and the comfort level.
Yeah, but again,
So
I'm
it's,
looking
I mean,
at-
we're on the same page in terms of what we're trying to do. I just, if we're going to be more aggressive in terms of assuming more things fall into place, and they probably will, a little bigger cushion would ease my comfort with the ability to try and make the school district work and do the other things in a bad year. That's all.
I think this is a bad year coming up. for
So,
other reasons.
just
I understood.
Just a little history that we got looking back to 2011 between special education, transportation, and tuition. In 2011, there was over $300,000 left over at the end of the year. 2012, there was over $46,000 left, no, excuse me, $118,000 left over. 2013, there was just under $8,000. That's the one close year, $8,000. 14, there was $266,000+ left.
And my point is, if we had a $250,000 reserve, then in the bad year, you wouldn't be 8,000 under, you'd be 150,000 under, and you'd be able to cover it quite easily. You know what I mean?
But even in
no,
that year,
these,
you didn't have to touch the reserve to handle it. I mean, it's
yeah, these are
the
left.
bottom line.
These are leftover monies. You have more money you have too much money. And you never had not enough. So I guess I'm confused why you want to take the 100,000 you have. And I do understand that one single student coming into the district could be as much as $300,000. But historically, we've always budgeted as a town very generously to special education because we understand the risks.
Absolutely.
And there's
Yeah,
always
I
been a
agree.
great deal left over. So
It is what it is.
all right, anything else on Article 5? Article 6,
Article 6, shall the Litchfield School District vote and raise the appropriate sum of $47,380 to reclaim and resurface the GMS playground area?
That's the one we talked about.
any,
Should it be clarified that it's actually the parking lot versus the playground area?
It's the playground area.
it's the playground.
It's a fenced in playground.
But is it, when I read that, I think, mulch. We're paving it, aren't we?
It's paved now.
It's paved,
Paved now.
yeah.
Right, so when I say reclaim and resurface, that could mean playground turf, or playground mulch.
No.
Not for $47,000.
Well, I understand that, but if I'm a person in town who's looking at this for the first time, you don't know what they might be
Understand
thinking.
it's the paved area.
You suggesting you should say resurface the GMS?
throw asphalt or pavement
Paved
area.
playground
Yeah,
area.
I just don't think it hurts to be very clear, so somebody says,
And I
hey,
understand
how
it,
much
but-
for mulch? Like,
Throw the pavement or asphalt.
I don't think anybody
and
thinks we're buying $47,000 worth of mulch.
all right, listen, you can put it
There's a
how
lot.
you want, and you can take the risk, I'm just trying to help you be a little more clear.
It's a valid point.
All right, anything else on Article 6?
So when are we voting on warrants?
That will be for the school district on January 8th,
Thank you.
and for the town on January 6th. All right, revenues. This was asked to be an agenda item, so we could look at revenues.
Yeah, just a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Frank, what's in the tuition revenue?
That would be, we made a little shift in that. It used to be just preschool tuition. It would be tuition in students from our district. And in this case, it also includes this year self-funded programs.
It does help,
It does,
self-funded, that's what it is,
yeah.
okay.
Self-funded used to be reported in the student activities line,
Okay.
but that's incorrect. It needs to be reported in tuition because technically those students that pay for self-funded programs are paying tuition.
So
Ideally.
does that cover all the self-funded
Yes.
costs?
Yep.
So, okay.
Do you think it doesn't?
Self-funded in the budget is $68,000, right?
So we're in the funded limit.
And the tuition is 56.
Those needs to be increased.
So it should be 68 plus whatever the other things that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay, that's, okay. The only other thing I had on this was the discussion we had Tuesday night, whether you folks would want to include a fund balance number in there or not. And I quite frankly don't care. Okay, I think that you're wrong not putting it in there.
So the budget committee can. There's a column in the DRA report, you folks.
I understand that.
Okay.
Okay, but, well, let me ask a different question. On the ballot, it's going to have a tax rate impact.
Mhm.
Who is going to develop that tax rate impact?
On
Between you two?
on the ballot, it would be the school district that does.
And what would you use for revenue?
We're gonna use my revenue.
So you wouldn't use the fund balance number?
Correct.
Yeah, and that defeats the whole purpose. What I was arguing about is that you're not, I don't think that you're painting your best picture to get that budget passed.
Well, I can paint a much better picture, Bill, but it wouldn't be a realistic picture.
Well, you know, we both know that this is not what's used to set the tax rate. Okay, when you set the tax rate, you got the real numbers.
Well, of course, that's my point
Yeah,
to all of
and,
this.
well, my point
process.
was, and you weren't here when we had the
Right.
discussion, you did a super job looking at some of the things that are unknown, the catastrophic aid and what have you, averaged them out,
Right,
and
right.
put a number in there. Fund balance is very similar. You have had, every year, you had fund balance money, okay? And you could have treated that, if you wanted to, very similarly.
Potentially.
And as I mentioned earlier, previously, we used to have $200,000 in there. And it gave a better representation to the voter of what they might anticipate in the way of a tax impact.
That's assuming everything has stayed equal. It's more philosophical.
Yeah,
The budget, budget this year is very tight. Budget last year, in my first year here, was very tight.
fund balance is revenue
I mean,
and appropriation.
we had a couple of,
Revenue and
we had a couple
appropriation.
home runs, if you will, last year. We had the LGC refund that was dropped right to the bottom line of the unassigned fund balance.
Again, I'm not trying to argue with you.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that Medicaid is such a wild card.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk, if you recall, last year, that there was this PR event going on to telling parents to not sign off and give the schools the ability to recover funds under Medicaid, so we were real cautious about that. Catastrophic aid, the state funded it at 74% of our entitlement. So these are really,
Yeah, but honestly,
you can look at trends, but there are other things that have been going on with the budget as well that bring a lot of angst from my standpoint.
Yeah.
So,
See, I haven't bothered to dig into it, but.
I mean, I could,
I
Bill,
can't-
I totally agree with you. I could take a 4-year average of what.
I wouldn't even do that. I mean,
But we're not gonna get the LGC refund. Medicaid could go away tomorrow. The state could underfund by 50% our entitlement in Cat aid. You know what I mean? So,
but again, if I wanted to, I could have gone back and looked at what the fund balance has been year after year after year, and
well, I understand.
I
I
can't.
totally get
think-
where you're coming from. I could have given the school board a budget, revenue projection that was up here somewhere. We can play with the averages, we can look at the trends.
And I wasn't suggesting that. What I'm trying to say is that I can't recall a year when there wasn't at least $200,000 of fund balance. That could be wrong, but I can't recall it, honestly.
Right.
And to me, if I were on the board, I would put $200,000 in there as possible revenue.
I mean, I'll ask.
And not, and it's not up to the budget committee to do that. It's really trying to help you guys sell your budget, you know? So,
It makes, if you even just look at the historical view, and I think getting it if you're concerned that the budget's tight, I would just, because basically this exercise is just to help figure out and pass the budget. It benefits the school district if you have a number there, because it's.
I get that.
It's
I get it, but I am not putting a number in. That's not my background. I do not put numbers in for unassigned fund balance.
Okay, so that's your
And
personal preference.
If you look at what's projected on a warrant article as to what the actual tax impact of that warrant article will come the following September, not even close.
well,
And I understand what you're saying, to get it approved, but I would hope that the intent of the warrant article trumps over the tax impact. That's my approach. That's what I do. I'm not on the budget committee. That's what I do.
I just, when you say you didn't anticipate these things last year happening, we don't know what wonderful unanticipated things are gonna happen next year.
I don't either. And I hope I'm sitting here thinking, wow, we really, I hope so too.
I heard a noise over here. Did someone wanna?
It was a grunt.
but the bottom line is that the number that will go on the ballot is his number.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It should be.
By the-
And I will, again, look at the school board number and say, I think you ought to take some direction. I'll give them some direction on this.
By the way, I agree with the rationale. The argument makes perfect sense. We do have to be cautious with our revenue, because we just get a letter in the mail or an email that says, by the way, you lost $200,000 in Cat aid this year, or whatever, and that's the way it is. So we are cautious with this. Politically, if something happens that comes back to bite us later, though, then, it will reflect badly on.
But this isn't the kind of thing that would come back and bite you, Brian.
It could, if you have numbers. So you predicted $200,000 and it wasn't there. It could happen, but,
First of all, nobody ever looks at that.
well,
Still,
Nobody I know ever goes back and
if
looks
they
at what
look,
we
they'd be looking at this
Yeah,
end.
just for-
If it did happen, they'd be looking at this end of the table, which is, we don't
But-
like to.
Bill, I'll make this commitment to you, if I'm here next year, okay, which I anticipate.
I hope I will be too.
And
I vote
you
for
will
that.
be as well, that,
No guarantee.
no one said anything about, but I will tell you that next year, the district has its final payment on the school building aid. Even though we retired the bond, there's still a
Yeah.
residual payment, and that's,
That's it,
I'm
yeah.
getting pretty close to that $200,000 you and I have been debating about.
Yeah.
I'll consider I'll make that recommendation to the board that we consider making an unassigned fund balance for the revenue projection.
For this coming in?
No, for the
Next year.
next year.
Next year.
Mr. Spencer, your
This
point
is all
is,
about
No, there's
passing
no
this
rationale
budget.
there. I'm sorry,
your
Frank.
point is that the
I
board
get
votes
it.
on it.
I get it, passing this budget, but
That makes
not
sense.
what I do.
That makes
All right.
sense.
Okay.
And I know you, and that's why I bypass you, and I look at these two guys and say, I think they overrule you, to be
You're my
perfectly
boss.
honest, okay? They really should, but,
All right,
Don't you guys.
anything else on revenues?
but you're gonna change the,
Yes, I will change that, that's in there, I think we put that up.
All right,
That database job.
moving on to the default. We also received copies of that. So I had a little trouble following it. What is the default number? 20,007,903? Is that it?
Yes,
Okay.
then you add in the bulk of food service and the Fed fund,
Okay, so,
and that brings you down to the total operating budget. Yep.
okay. All right, any questions that you want to ask on the default budget?
I just remind the committee that the board has asked us to continue on researching a few other lines to bring some further clarification to it. It's in the area of curriculum, the textbook replacement cycle. One area that the board last year, my first year, made a decision that we would pretty much flatline utilities in the default because it's difficult to project, even though we tried to in the recommended budget. One area of this default budget that causes some concern for me on the utility side is electricity. Because of the projections that we're hearing, anywhere upwards of 20, 25, 30% increases in electric bills for next year. We're not projecting that in the default, however, it's something that we're going to closely monitor.
Are there any rate cases currently before the PUC for that? I mean, those kind of rates, I mean, those things you know in advance because there's a PUC case out there. PSNH just increased their kilowatt hour price by about a penny, but
that was for the winter.
nothing to those kind of,
It's what we're being for.
you are buying PSNH, right? Just like,
I'm sorry, were you through? I'm sorry.
yeah, I just wanted to know who we're using for the electrical supplier. PSNH or is it an alternate supplier?
I believe it's PSNH.
I've just seen this the first time, obviously. Folk ed tuition to other districts, your default number is $30,000. Is that what you have in the budget?
What was it?
30,000? For some reason, I thought it was less than that in the budget.
I'm sorry, Bill, what was the
How
category?
much money do you have in the budget for voc ed
I don't remember.
tuition?
But that was that's the number that for the students for next year that they have.
Yeah, it should be the same number in the
Not
budget.
necessarily, because that budget was 2 years ago, they added students since that 2015 budget was created.
I'm talking about your proposed budget for next year.
Right,
Should be the same number.
should be the same number.
And I don't recall that being that high in this budget book.
Yeah, I'd have to go back. Find it.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but for some reason I thought it was less than that. And I don't know where you keep it.
CTE, CTE tuition?
Where is it?
Did you say CTE tuition? CTE tuition?
Okay, question.
Right.
Give me a few minutes, Bill, and I'll get it.
Should be under guidance.
On the
CHS guidance.
Is there guidance tab here? No, there is. On the Campbell High School guidance, maybe?
Yeah. Vocational education. Five, six.
What's the number that you asked me for?
5385,
I
Yes,
think I just found it.
after-school administration reduction.
25,385.
after a $5,000 school board reduction.
So
School administration reduction.
why would you have 30 in the default?
Because that's the projected tuition for next year. That was given to us by
Yeah, it was
Director of Guidance.
30,385.
Why would you have more in the default than you're asking in the operating budget?
Because that's the projected tuition for next year for the vocational students attending the schools that they're attending this year.
And why isn't that what's in the operating budget?
Because the school board took a $5,000.
No, the principal.
Oh, the principal did, I'm sorry. That was,
If you remember, she said she went right across the board.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I'm sorry, school administration took a $5,000 cut. I'd have to ask her why she felt that was necessary.
That's right, Bill. The school board can make reductions as well, and it's not necessarily to the default.
And
oh, I understand that.
there was
I
a,
understand how the
yeah.
default goes.
Right.
there was a, if you remember, a $70,000 bottom line reduction by the school board. So in essence, what we should do is that 30,000 is the budget number that we have, and that should be reflected in the default. That cut should be moved somewhere else, basically, because it's the bottom line cut. Okay.
I have a question about the default salaries and benefit salaries. Does this reflect the reduction of the grade 3 teacher?
Does not.
Because based on the numbers, you're reducing the K-3 teacher would still provide the same level of services, so it should probably be reflected there.
You know, the default budget is not to provide the same level of service. The default budget is to provide the same level of appropriation.
Is it-
So,
So the fact
so
that you go
it-
from 19.6 to like 14?
I'm just saying, I'm saying general. The default budget is same level of appropriation. So if the services change, it shouldn't mean, unless there's a teacher contract or something, the appropriation shouldn't change. Same thing, the way it seems like with electric, if there's no contract, the default budget money should not go up because we think electric's gonna go up. The appropriation should be the same
But
as
that
last
doesn't
year.
prevent them from going down. to
You're right,
actually
it doesn't
reflect
prevent, but in all fairness, it should, if something goes down in a new budget, in all fairness, it could stay the same level of appropriation in the default, even if it's higher. Now, customarily, sometimes they'll say, look, we don't need the money, so we'll cut it. But again, in fairness, the default budget is a mathematical equation with same level of appropriation. So if we need next year $10,000 less, but it was $10,000 more last year, it could stay $10,000 more in the default. But the other side has to be true also. If we think something's gonna go up 10,000, and it's 10,000 last year, you can't say, well, I think it's gonna go up, like electric, so we gotta put another 10 grand in the default. Can't do that either. The same level of appropriation, and that's where so many people, it gets gray, it's not
Perfect
service.
example of that, and what happened last year is transportation.
Well,
We knew buses were gonna be increasing significantly, but yet we couldn't put it in the default.
I know, and you know what the problem is, and this is where it gets a little tougher, because there wasn't a contract signed.
Yeah.
So you.
But what I'm saying
Right.
is an example, though, it's something
Right.
we know is gonna be increasing considerably.
Right.
Yet we couldn't change the numbers in the default
The
budget.
thing is, the default budgets aren't fair, you know, and it's made to be so that there should be really no discussion or debate or votes. It should be what it is, on both sides, up or down, it should be. So, like I said, if we need $100,000 less in a line item next year, it's fair to have $100,000 more as the default, because that is the same level of appropriation. But it needs to be fair the other way, too.
That's fine, I just,
Yeah.
like I said, you're right.
It's
not
tough,
fair.
it's tough to stay focused with a default budget, because it's too easy to think about service, but it's appropriation.
Any other discussion on the default budget? All right, hearing none. We will move on to budget voting. Special services.
Madam Chair, before we start on that budget, can I make a motion to increase salaries?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to increase salaries by $86,367.46.
86,000.
$367.46.
46 cents.
could you repeat that?
Yep, 86,367.46.
I'll second that for discussion.
All right, and that's salaries and,
On the salaries.
This is gonna open up the salary discussion that we had, that,
okay.
a little earlier.
All right, go ahead. It's been made in,
Chair, this is a point of clarification. The school board last night voted to increase their recommended budget coming from the school board to the budget committee, if that makes sense.
No. Yes, it does, but
But that's what they did. So I don't, it's a point of clarification, how you want to handle it, but the board last night took a vote to increase their recommended budget.
all right, there's been a motion made and seconded to raise the salaries by $86,367.46. Further discussion. What is this and why?
Well, last evening, we voted to change the administration's contract. And as far as changes in benefits and severance package, which will lead to a substantial savings going down the road.
Why does it cost more?
Well, part of that is a buyout for a severance package and buyout for vacation days that have accrued.
So what salary does this belong under?
So is that SAU salaries, or is this teachers and salaries?
This would be administration.
Administration.
Yeah, spread throughout district.
So I'm gonna, when I look at our salaries and benefits, I'm gonna guess this would be page 51. Because is this a district-wide?
No.
what is,
No, if I may.
Yeah?
what is it?
It would be split amongst the salary line for administrators for GMS, LMS, CHS,
And central office.
and central office. So it impacts the administrators from all four of those.
LMS, CHS, SAU.
But how? What is it?
What is it?
So we're buying their
Severance.
vacation time?
Correct. We're changing the benefits package to the administration.
Okay.
Right now, the administration is on two different packages. There were 4 individuals that were grandfathered into the old system,
Yeah,
and now we're bringing them all into the same benefit package.
okay. And what do we need the money for?
To pay off, or to pay out, should I say.
What they've already approved?
Correct.
So it's 88,000 for 4 individuals.
That's correct.
But you're fine with losing teachers and stuff.
It's not about teachers.
No, it's not teachers.
No.
No.
So,
So on that same conversation, I mean, since we're talking about the salaries line, we have definitely a deficit here between the schools and the town that Mr. Byron was very kind to point out to us. And one of when we're talking about increasing this, I would talk about decreasing this and moving the raise increases, that wage pool, to a warrant article to be in equity with the town. So I don't know where this is going. We're in the middle of a budget here, and we're making changes on the fly here with our benefits
So we need
packages.
an agreement, and if we lose the budget, where would the money come from out of the default budget? I
I'm sorry, I
mean,
didn't
it's
get-
just, so we've committed ourselves to 90,000,
86,000.
all right.
so this is a change that has actually taken place and is now in their contracts?
So is that reflected in the default budget as well?
It will be.
It will be. It should be.
It's in the contract structure has been approved, yes.
So
Without any voter input?
That's fine.
no.
No, it's a contract, it's not fine.
So,
School board determines contracts.
clarify once again for me how this money gets paid out and why it gets paid out.
Administrators on the old contract receive severance on separation for a variety of things, as you know. So this would be a means of being able to, in the new contract, remove some or all of those severance options, but we would need a pool to be able to buy them out for that.
We're paying them upfront.
I'm sorry?
We're paying them upfront even if they're not leaving.
Right. So rather than pay out in higher level at separation, pay out what they've accrued now as they get moved to a new contract.
Could it be considered like a payout over a few years to reduce the impact? I mean, $90,000 in this budget is a lot of money.
Yes.
It's like just, oh.
The impact would be even larger, though, if they remained the way they were, and then if they were to leave, the impact would have been much greater.
If they left, but they're not leaving. And if they do leave, then we would absorb that impact. I see several things in this budget process have been like that. And last week, it was only Tuesday, right? On Tuesday night, we covered a bunch of areas where there was additional increases for training up and above beyond the contracts. We've got increases all over that are well past whatever we are contractually obligated to as a town, that the previous administrations have approved. And here we are, and I seconded this so we could talk about the salary thing, because it was one of the things on when we got to the bottom line salary discussion that I wanted to bring up, was about straightening out that inequity between the town and the schools, which I think we left, not intentionally, but we created it. And in this case, if they're not leaving, we're gonna buy them out, and doesn't stop them from leaving tomorrow. Again, this is another one of those areas where we have no way of binding the person to us for any period of time. So we lose that administrator, and we pay them, we're gonna pay them a big lump sum of money. They could leave tomorrow, decide to retire. And at the end of their contract, tomorrow, if they did decide, we'd pay them then. So it seems like a
Right,
way
it's
to
gonna reduce-
accelerate payment to individuals without them leaving.
Because we have several individuals that are on an old program, then they're now gonna go to a different program, which in the long run is gonna save the taxpayers money
When does this take effect?
next year.
So July 1?
But the contracts are signed, and it's a given, we'll have to pay it out next year. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
It's a given that we will have to pay these monies out next year. because the
This year,
contracts are
correct?
signed. Is that a given?
No,
To a
it's going to
warrant.
be paid out next year. It's the maximum exposure to the district, I think is the way we calculate it, because again, part of that composition of the calculation is unused vacation.
Okay. I'm trying to say I want to support this, but I want to know that you're really going to have to pay out exactly what he asked for, or approximately what you asked for. And I'm not sure what you just said.
Because part of it's a moving target. Right now, what we're anticipating for the unused, part of the component of that calculation of the accrual includes unused vacation time.
Okay, but that'll be a small increment, increase on
Right.
the major
Decrease.
numbers, so.
The decrease.
Because we looked at the maximum what they would be eligible for in that buyout, and they could decide they want to take a month off and then lower our exposure. So that's a maximum exposure that we could have, and that's one piece of it.
Madam Chairman, I seem to recall a consensus or a policy, if you will, amongst our committee that we wouldn't receive information and vote on that information
night.
the same night.
Mhm,
Right, so I'd like to table this to another meeting.
mhm.
When's the other meeting?
January
6th.
January,
In which we're prepared to do
Salary
global bottom line adjustments anyways.
yeah, I agree. I think we needed the information tonight, but I don't think this is something that we can make a decision on. This is new information. And this is the kind of thing that we saved January 8th for, is as we go along, we understand there are changes. That may be information you receive. So,
This is one of the reasons that we made certain we voted on it last evening also, so it could be presented to the budget committee.
and we do appreciate that because we would need this information to make our decision. But I do think this is appropriate for January 8th. So,
So was that motion seconded?
it was made and seconded for discussion purposes.
Did we make a motion to table
It made a motion to table
till
January 8th.
I will make that motion.
Motion has been made to table to January 8th. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? And I think by tabling it to January 8th, it's in line with our ability to consider information and make an intelligent decision.
Could we get a copy of the existing policy as well as the proposed policy?
No, we have a motion and a second, we should
sorry.
vote.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's been made and seconded. All those in favor of tabling this until January 8th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes 9-0.
First. 9-0?
Yeah, it
I
might
was
be.
gonna say no, just for that.
So
I was on a roll.
what information do we need so that we can make an intelligent decision in January?
I'd like to see a copy of the existing policy as well as the new policy and projections as to who, how many vacation days we're looking at.
It's actually not policy, they're contracts, and we're walking up.
Paperwork, I'd like to see a copy of the paperwork.
I'll show you all the paperwork if you wish for, but we can't, there's no policy, there's a contract.
Okay.
And we can't identify specifics because this,
All right, can I see the worst case number of days?
we
that we're
can
looking
give you
at?
the numbers.
Yes, fine.
How was the 86 calculated, like what,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we can-
vacation
X
days?
amount of days
X amount of- Yeah, how is
So
it?
they're just groupings that
That's
will,
fine.
Yep,
even for us to have identified 4 individuals is walking a fine line of
Dicey.
disclosure.
in a small town, there's only a few people that fit in some of
I
the.
know, it's already happening right now, I'm sure.
So yeah, if we could get how you developed that 86,367
You bet.
number,
Yeah.
that would help us.
Sure. You get it?
Okay. All right, back to special services. All right, starting with page 1.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, on page 1, to reduce line 332, tutor services, to $7,500. That's a reduction of $8,200.
Second.
All right, a reduction of $8,200 to a new line total of $7,500. It's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
I have several motions this evening, and, one of the things that we talk about on a regular basis, whether it's the right approach or not, is averaging, right? That was a factor, not the only factor, in all of my decisions tonight. Trending is important, but I've also factored in the discussions that we've had and the district needs. And I think in several areas across both special education and even to a small extent curriculum, they're just way over budgeted.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of line 332, tutor services, a reduction of $8,200 to a new line total of $7,500, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So it is 711. Motion passes. Anything else on page 1? Hearing nothing. Page 2?
Page 1.
Oh, page 1.
Sorry, I was just doing my votes. Good.
You want me?
Okay, I will make a motion on 335.
335 legal services.
Yep.
Motion is,
To reduce that by $3,000 to $15,000.
Okay, there is a motion to reduce by 3,000, leaving a new line of 15,000. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Further discussion?
I'm setting it to the max high that was overspent on this account.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah,
plus some.
the discussion we had was, they need it when they have particular cases.
Right.
And the last couple of years, they really haven't had to spend it at all. To be honest with you, I think Andrew was being very generous with 15,000.
Well,
But we wanted to support it.
I can say a lot of people have worked very, very hard to be in a situation where we're not exposed to due process. And a lot of kids have benefited from that. So this is actually a very good thing.
Does the savings get rolled into the fund balance that gets upfront, or does this go special ed and gets returned to the voters? Just, if it's considered under special ed, then it goes directly back to the voters, correct? We don't touch it. But if it goes to the fund balance at the end, it can be encumbered.
We still have to appropriate it.
I understand that, but I'm saying if I spend it, is this up for grabs if it doesn't get spent, or does it go back to the taxpayer?
Well, it's, this particular one is part of the special education
Okay, so
budget.
it falls under the.
It depends on what the school board chooses to do. I mean, they can follow that or not follow it. It's their option.
Well then. About 3,000,
Amend.
huh? I'm thinking about it, if you're at 15.
Want to change it, change it. I had 1,000, so I'll let you know.
Just as a reminder, right, I had to look back to 2010, in
Mhm.
which 12,000 was spent. And in 2012, we did spend just under 15,000.
Right, but we've since then changed how we
Understood.
code our kids. We aren't subjected to as much legal.
All right, any further discussion?
So I understand that. No, I think I'd like to amend the motion to reduce it to, I'll go 5,000, so a reduction of 13,000 total. Because I think that's more, I'm sorry, that's my motion to reduce it.
Okay, so there is an emotion to the amendment to, there's an motion to the, there's an amendment to the motion, oh gosh.
Motion to amend.
To 13,000, leaving a
No,
line.
I wanted to go to 5,000, so a total reduction from yours of another, what, 10,000?
So a reduction of 13,000,
Yes,
leaving a
sorry.
line total of 5,000.
Correct.
Okay. And there was a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I understand you went back to 2010. I seem to recall that we've since revised how we address the kids who seek services, so I think we're less likely to expose ourselves to legal trouble. The past couple of years indicate that you're at less than 1,000. The type, there's gotta be places where we can make cuts to reduce this for the taxpayer, and I think that this is a safe place. And if we do find ourselves in trouble, we do have a fund available that we could tap into. To me, it seems way overfunded. And- Go ahead.
Dr. Cochran, when it says school district attorney, is this attorney, the money for the attorney for use only in regards to special education?
I believe we use two different attorneys, and this is, my belief is that this is the fund essentially that we tap into when we either go due process with someone. So due process is when either the parents and the school can't agree on what the student's educational program is. There are times that it's worth spending the money because you really believe that there's a better placement for the student. Often that better placement is a significant saving. So there are times that you don't spend in this fund in groups of hundreds of dollars. You spend in $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. We haven't lately. Part of the reason is that I think the quality of the IEPs, the quality of the services being delivered has left us exposed. There's also sometimes zero because if those things aren't in place, you don't go due process because you know you're going to lose. And I think we've done a good transition. That doesn't mean that it won't get used, but, I think that that we haven't used it. I think we've done a good job of working with people. I think we're doing a good job in special education. If you want to make the reduction based on track record, that's fine. Recognize that if we go into this fund, it'll probably be $8,000 to $12,000 minimum, because that's about the money for one. That's all.
My opinion is I like to have a little cushion for the risk. I do. And you made a comment that, this is one area of opportunity. While I agree, I have several other motions tonight.
And I was, when I heard the first number, I said, okay, it's a little low. I heard the second number, I said, maybe a little high, and that's why, it's a crapshoot, and.
But we have $100,000.
We have a reserve fund, that's
Wait,
about
reserve
it.
Yeah,
fund?
we-
No, we're gonna use that later on.
So I don't believe your reserve fund can be used for legal fees. especially.
I would think probably not.
Yeah, I think, right, that's probably just for the actual
Yeah.
services provided.
And so you said historically, we haven't, the last time we reached that level of,
2012, and we've never spent more than that, from what I can tell.
so, the last several years, it's down.
And then in prior years, we had real issues there with,
And that's the thing, is there have been years with serious issues, but if we have a better track record, maybe we try it.
The track record is going in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, you got school district attorney and Primex. I know Primex is another set of attorneys? No?
Frank, did you want to?
Primex is our insurance, and they help us cover,
Primex is essentially risk, the whole package of risk management.
Primex will insure over due process complaints filed against the district as part of our global liability umbrella policy. Before we get to the Primex coverage, there's some upfront attorney fees, and that's where you see, I think to answer your question, this was the attorney that you see outside of the 13,000, that we have one attorney that is specifically for special education. They specialize, they're specialists today, they specialize in special education. Then there might be some ancillary costs for us to get to the Primex. It's kind of a bridge when we cross over. It says, okay, we're going to due process. It actually gets into legal. Primex will pick that up and start covering. We have to use their attorney, so that process. But there's still some ancillary expenses, and that's, I think, how she's budgeting that. So it helps us during these processes can go on and on and on. So that's where there might be some costs that Primex won't cover, but it's part of when Primex picks it up, if you will.
Okay, so that $5,000 that's in this line for Primex isn't for like an insurance policy which needs to be paid. That is if something happens, then we would spend that
There
money,
might be
so.
something over and above that we
I
would have
understand.
to expend out. No, Primex, when she puts Primex there, I think she's intending that once it gets into that cycle, that Primex is now covering it under our global liability policy.
So absolute best case scenario, if everybody's, then there's no problems, nothing will be spent, there's no deductible, right? I mean, best case, absolute best case.
Well, absolute, see, there is no absolute, because you may have done everything exactly by the book wonderfully, but if the parents disagree and want to spend money on their lawyer, you need to spend money on your lawyer. And likewise, we can have no money for lawyers, because we have to agree with every out-of-district placement, because we don't have a good case. So there's not always a correlation.
And what's a lawyer's, 90 some odd dollars an hour?
More or less.
Hundreds.
Samantha, who I've paid.
Two,
All right.
2, 3, 4, easy.
is there further discussion
I haven't
on,
had to see one.
I was just gonna say, that's good news on your part, that the 90s.
Now you got a bad lawyer.
That's a photocopying expense.
all right, Chris, you have a,
If I could just please, again, know what would the exact number left in that line if that motion?
there's gonna be
Okay.
5,000 left.
Okay,
Last
thank you.
year, they spent $745, the year before, $472.
Okay, I'm good.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of line 335, legal services, a reduction of $13,000 to a new line total of $5,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain?
that was the
Sorry.
motion on the amendment.
It's an amendment, and so, who was in the negative? Two,
Aye.
three, there were three of you, okay. So, that is, 6-3-0, motion, the amendment passes. So now the main motion is the full reduction of $13,000, leaving $5,000 in that line. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes 6-3-0. Page 1, anything else?
I have one that goes from 1 to 2 on 569 handicap tuition.
Okay.
This one here, I looked at pretty hard. And you know, I don't take this motion lightly, but my motion is to reduce this one by $50,000 to a total of $508,300.
508,300, that's a reduction of $50,000.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded to reduce $50,000 under handicap tuition. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly a very high area in the budget that consistently, year over year over year, looking at the analysis, it's never spent, right? And I understand and I can appreciate, you know, a new student moving into the district. I can appreciate the variability in projecting out what the costs will be. But I'm reminded again of that $2 million gap, right? And if I think there's an opportunity here to reduce this without impact to services that we're providing, I'm gonna make it.
And the only thing I would add to that is when we reviewed this particular budget, we talked very briefly about the anticipated Longview School and just how solid that was. And my perception of what I heard was that it was there in case we needed it. It might be there, might not be.
Well, I had some follow-up conversation with Director Bandersky, and it's a long process and a long conversation before someone gets placed. And at what point in that conversation do you really believe that there's going to be a commitment and an outlay? And Director Bandersky does not want to put something in the budget just because maybe. So this really is a case where, you know, knowing the conversation, knowing the assessment results, the student needs, what we have to offer. Could this happen? Yes. But if she's putting anticipated, then it really is anticipated. If she felt that it was a matter of this school or another school, it would not have the word anticipated in front of it. Mr. Spencer, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're the other person in the room with a huge history in this, so.
Yeah.
And that's what I was just looking at, the history. All of these people exist today, but historically, they don't all exist a year from now.
Yeah, but, you know, if you look at what they're looking at actually this year, and we had that discussion also,
Yeah.
versus what is budgeted for this year, they go to $90,000, I think, in handicap tuition that's
I'm not sure.
it's in that order of magnitude.
Yeah.
That is not allocated at this particular point in time. And that's just because things have happened. you know. I think St. Anne's came in and something else must have come out.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion?
I'd like to go back to line 1, please. 272, conference workshop and.
Wait, whoa,
I'm sorry.
motion.
Oh,
Yeah, anything more on this
I'm sorry.
motion?
I'm thinking about something else.
All right,
Jump the gun.
hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of line 569 handicap tuition, a reduction of $50,000, leaving a new line total of $508,300, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passes 8-1-0. We're still on page 1.
Yeah, well, he jumped to page 2. I didn't want to.
Well, that's
It was
because
1
the
to
total.
Yeah,
the
I know, but
total-
sometimes when you get over to 2, you keep on
Yeah, the
going.
total is on page 1, so we're still technically on page 1.
On conference and workshops, 272, that was a very large budget increase. I'd like to make it a motion to remove $35,000 from that.
Motion has been made to remove $35,000, leaving $2,000. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Yeah, my reason there is we go to the voters and we ask them to approve a teacher's contract with certain salaries, benefits, training, and provisions in there. Although I understand the need, I think this is so far vastly up and above what we've contracted for, that this is the kind of item that really should go back to the voters for some kind of clarification. Do they want to do that? I just wanted to bring it up for discussion, again, in the scope of this budget. This is a very large jump in one item.
I tend to agree that a warrant article would probably be appropriate, because we're asking people to fund, well, here it's 5, right, over the course of a few years, 5, with no way to, I'm sorry?
No, I'm talking myself.
With no way to guarantee that after they obtain their certification, they're going to stay. So this could potentially be 25,000 or some order of that from now until eternity. And I think that the voters should weigh in on that. Are we willing to expend potentially $5,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 every year for certification? So, and as for the tutors, I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. We have a number of tutors in the budget. Would it not make more sense to train our current tutors to handle special ed students than to train special ed people?
Well, this
to
is,
deal with
this is to get
math
certifications in special education, and which they're saying is a high demand field out there right
There's
now.
one line item for math and reading training. Is that
For
for?
special ed teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So similar to my 2 cents, right? I am an advocate for certifications in this area. I think it's a real benefit to the district, so I appreciate where you're coming from, but I won't support your motion. For 272 and 580, what I had thought, right, and what I was prepared to do on January 8th
Mm-hmm.
was to look at 272 and 580s globally and think about where we need to come down to in those lines.
And the only reason I brought that up was because I think this is a change of philosophy. This is not me not supporting the training. This is me saying we contracted a service with the LEA. They came to the table and said what they wanted. The school district came to the table and they said what they wanted. They negotiated a contract. The voters of the town of Litchfield ratified that by approving it last year for the salaries and benefits.
Yep.
This is a benefit.
Yeah, I get the technical contract
So-
aspect of it. Totally
And I just
appreciate where
wanted
you're
to,
coming from.
my motion is merely to get this on the table to discussion.
I also see the true value this can add to the district.
Yeah, this seemed like it was an area, this is gonna benefit the district. This isn't the staff asking for additional hours. This is the administration saying,
Change philosophy.
we need this when we go into special education meetings, and we don't have this. And how can we get it? They've created a plan to get it at a lower cost than probably one of those lawsuits we were talking
Now,
about.
if I may just add one more comment, I think it's still budgeted high, but I'm not looking to remove it. Right? I'll be looking to make a motion on it, but
If I can make a comment to what Carrie had said, and someone had said it at another meeting, and I don't recall who, as far as, and it may have been you, that do we have a contract signed by these individuals that once they go through the training, will they stay? I don't think that we require anyone in this town that goes through training, and I may be wrong. I mean, I don't think policemen or firemen sign a contract saying, we're gonna put you through this training that would get you to a lieutenant, to a captain. Do they sign a contract saying you have to stay?
I think I don't know if there's a physical contract, but there's an agreement after, in the police officer, I believe they're here for at least a year.
Okay.
But I'm not even sure if that's a gentleman's agreement or not, but.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, you're not gonna hold back training. I don't think you should hold back any type of training that
This is not
that can better the district, just in fear that they're gonna be leaving.
This is
No.
not
Because,
standard
I
training,
mean,
though.
someone can leave, it is training.
It's
Certification
course
is-
it's course reimbursement, certifications,
Right.
and,
It's gonna better that individual and hopefully better the district.
So then
I-
make the case to the voters and they'll approve it overwhelmingly. But I don't think I don't think we have the right to make that decision for them, especially given the tightness of the budget. We're currently, I mean, I understand it's difficult to meet our current obligations, but clearly we're meeting them. And if this is to make it easier for us, then I see no harm in asking the voters. That's my opinion.
Madam Chair?
Further
and I'm not gonna argue that myself. I'd made the motion and said my opinion.
Dr. Cochran?
I don't think this is a voter motion at all, because what you're voting on is whether or not an LD certified teacher has enough hours left in the day to deliver the services that are in legally mandated IEPs, if you have one LDP teacher and they have to show up to 6 IEP meetings in a week, and they don't have enough hours to service the kids, we're violating federal law and the rights that that kid has to an education. We need more LD teachers. We could hire another general special educator, if that would help.
Do we need
but
5? Can we get away with another 1? I mean, what's the
we have
rationale?
1 for 2 buildings right now.
Okay.
We'd like to have 2 per building.
I thought it was more, it was provided for more than 2.
I'm sorry?
My notes say
The
5
goal
people
was-
taking 3 courses each.
The goal was 4 or 5, I think. Yes, sorry.
5.
Calculated out at 7 people.
And you need, what, 7 classes for your accreditation or something like that?
Is it appropriate if I ask Mr. Cutter, because you did mention that you support somewhat of a cut, is it appropriate if I ask your rationale and what your cut is, so I could help understand this a little better?
It's nowhere near 35,000, I'll tell you that. My cut's more, it's 2,000. All right, that's the number in kind of in the global, and this is the largest cut out of all of 272, right? But it's $2,000 for this particular area. And it's purely because of the math that we were provided as a committee where, 3 classes, 5 teachers, can range from 15 to 1,600 class. I did the math and, I think you're budgeting slightly higher than you should, right? And you can still obtain the certifications for the 5 teachers. That's my rationale.
It wasn't directed specifically at this particular line.
Well, so,
You're looking at the
I'm gonna look at the global
Yeah.
on January 8th, but you can attribute $2,000 on my global, which I can tell you right now, I'm looking at right around $5,000 across all 272s. Most of that's right here.
I think this number is big enough that we should almost treat it, this by itself, and then look at 272,
Separately.
everything else. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because this is by far I mean, this is, 90-some% of the increase.
It is.
So I think it would be a more fruitful conversation to say, let's have a conversation about this number, and then about some sort of bottom line on the rest.
I'd be happy to do that.
That's the,
I mean, do you agree it is a change of philosophy? We've always contracted for that piece. Cindy, I defer to you on the school board. You've negotiated the contracts. We deferred to putting those kind of things into the contract. The course reimbursements and those kind of things are in the LEA contract.
I agree with that, except that that is staff members who they themselves want to further themselves. This is the district saying, we have a need, you, and you, we want you to go take classes to benefit us.
and accelerate. And the first, my
Yeah.
assumption is, and when I spoke to Director Bandersky, she agreed, the first course that they would take would be eligible through the LEA fund. So this is to fund additional courses during any given year,
Beyond
not
that.
the first course.
But what I'm saying is even beyond what's in the contract, this is a substantial
Yes.
increase.
Yeah.
I'd
But-
like to make a motion to amend.
Okay, there,
I'm sorry, did you have a comment? Did I interrupt? I'm sorry.
a motion to amend?
Yes, I'd like to make a reduction to this line of $2,000, taking it from 37,000 to 35,000.
Okay, there is a motion to leave $35,000 as the new line total and a reduction of $2,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded. Further discussion?
I kind of understand this a little bit better now, and if what you said is accurate, which I have no reason to believe otherwise, that this isn't a teacher saying, I feel like taking a class.
Right.
May or may not be totally directed toward my purpose.
Mhm.
This is the school district trying to fill a need and seeking out somebody to say, I would like you to take this class and get to this level, and that's accurate, right?
Mhm.
But there's no guarantee that that person will take that class, or take all the classes, or get the certification.
So we'll look at it next year.
Well, currently, if we don't, if we need somebody
Right.
and we don't have somebody, we contract somebody, correct?
Or the director
Or
goes to the
we
meetings.
have to take services away from a student, and they don't get the services that are in their IEP.
Well, I mean-
That was not a good plan either.
No, but my understanding when she was here is that we have somebody that we called in to sit during the meeting.
There are times to do that, and that's typically $95 an hour.
But it's still less than 25,000 a year.
Maybe.
Well, but once you have them certified, there's no more cost.
assuming they stay.
But you know what, there's no guarantees that anybody's gonna stay anywhere.
That's
You know, folks,
But-
this is one of these tough decisions that we always talk about. The tough decisions have to be made. And you know, there's employment, I mean, what, you know, asking people to stay. I think I don't think you're allowed, you can't legally bind somebody to a job. I think the most you could have is gentleman's agreement. And look, I'm speaking from the sense, yeah, I would love to bind somebody to a job if you paid for their education and got them to a point. But I don't think that would stand up in a court of law, quite honestly.
Actually, it holds up in the military.
Yeah,
This
right,
is
it
the
does.
military. All right, there's a motion, an amendment, which is to make a reduction of $2,000, leaving $35,000 in the line, which is 272, conferences and workshop. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, who is for? For the amendment, so 5-4, the motion, the amendment passes. So the main motion now is $35,000 in the line with the total reduction of $2,000 in 272 conferences and workshops. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So that's 6-3-0, a motion passes for a $2,000 reduction.
That was a very good discussion.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of these very good discussions, and that's why we go till midnight.
Two more to go.
And unfortunately, it was all on page one.
Yes.
And that's, what gets us in trouble
All right.
too sometimes.
Save them to page 4.
All right. Is there anything else on page 1? I'm not sure there's any lines left that we haven't touched, so page 2. Page 3. Page 4.
I'd like to make a motion on line 650 software, reducing it to $900, so from 1,100 to 900, reduction of 200.
Okay, so, page 4, 650 software, a reduction of $2,000, leaving a new.
200.
200.
$200, leaving a new line total of 900.
Okay.
Sorry. Further, it's been made, is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, any further discussion?
Yeah, I went through my past 2 budget books on this one, and actually a few of these that are coming up. And same descriptions, understanding some of the discussions that we've had. It's never been spent. So setting it to $900 is setting it to the max high that was spent, actually going back to 2013. As you can see, that was $867. I'm even being generous with that.
All right, any further discussion?
Who seconded that?
Hearing none, all those in favor of line 650 software, $200 deduction, leaving a new line total of $900, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So that's 8-1-0, motion passes. Anything else on page 4? Page 5?
You done on page 4?
No. You're awfully quick between me writing notes and.
Sorry.
So page 4, 734, equipment additional.
Alrighty.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce that line by $1,133 to set it to $5,000.
Second.
It's been made and seconded to reduce 734 equipment addition, a reduction of $1,133 for a new line total of $5,000. Additional discussion?
When I looked at this, again, I went back to previous years and understanding the need. I'm just trying to refresh my memory of my notes here. I'm setting it to the max high that was ever spent, which is back in the 2014 area. Actually, 2014, as you see, was 4,369, so this is even plus. None of the descriptions, just for the record, have changed over the past 2 years. It's all the same.
I thought these were all IEP driven, is what Devin
Nothing's
said when she
changed
was
year
here.
over year.
So the description is the same,
Yep.
and the costs, the actual expenditures are much lower.
Correct.
All right, any further discussion?
Yeah. The numbers and the equipment itself are accessibility stuff. The DD is for students with developmental delay. It's very specific, and all of the equipment relates to each other, to the same diagnoses. If this is for a student or two students, then it's very specific to those students, and nothing else will do what this does.
Nothing else, can you clarify that? Nothing else will do what this does?
This allows students to access the curriculum with visual impairment. Maybe a student may be legally blind and requires significant resources to access curriculum. May need a screen reader, may need to use text-to-speech, may need, and so if you look at how they scaffold around a visual developmental delay case. So, given that no one asked any questions to Director Bandersky, and those cluster to me, together, I suspect that it's a specific case, or, well, certainly a specific function. This isn't random equipment. This is all related around the same sort of student issue.
Well, looking at the current approved budget is 1550, and the description is exactly the same, then one would believe that 1550 is a better number than even 5,000. So I think 5,000 is pretty generous.
Well, but we don't know, because the question got asked tonight instead of when Director Bandersky was here.
What he's saying is, what is written here under equipment additional is the exact same thing that was written in last year's budget. So in last year's budget, all of this was asked for. The school district set it at 1550 after they got the default. So if 1550 was enough last year for this same exact thing, then certainly $5,000 is pretty generous for the same exact thing this year.
Listen, I'd be willing to withdraw my motion pending additional information if you'd like to research.
I'm sorry.
I would be willing to withdraw my motion if you.
And what was the reduction in the motion?
1,133
To,
5,000.
Leaving 5,000 in that line.
that should be doable.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor of 734, equipment additional, a reduction of $1,133 to a new line total of $5,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstention? 810, the motion passes. Let me know when you finish writing your notes.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else on page 4? Page 5?
I'd like to make a motion on line 820, dues and subscriptions. And that motion is for a reduction of $313, setting it to $500.
A motion is for a reduction of 313, leaving a new line total of $500. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Another one where I looked year over year. Descriptions haven't changed, but the numbers have. Early years was 120 for the last 2 years. TS Gold, although the number of students is new this year, the budget for the last few years was $300, so that's up $283. And the mathworksheetsite.com, same description, that was $150 last year, so it's less this year. Again, looking at trending and trying to make sense of what's actually needed, I think $500 is far more reasonable, seeing since it's the same asks year over year over year and never spent.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of line 820, dues and subscriptions, a reduction of $313 to a new line total of $500, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstain? So 7-0, motion passes. Anything else on page 5? Page 6.
I'd like to make a motion on line 130 overtime to reduce it to $1, so a reduction of $299.
A reduction of $299, leaving a new line total of $1. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Never spent.
All right. All those in favor of line 130 overtime, a reduction of $299, leaving $1 in the, as the new line total, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 7-0, motion passes. Anything else on page 6? Page 7?
Any other committee members like that?
No, they know what to do.
I guess so. I'm the bad guy tonight. Page 7, line 734, equipment additional. I'd like to make a motion to reduce this by $2,176.
Leaving a new line total of $4,000?
Yes.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Discussion?
This one here, I did my homework. It specifically says iPads, and you do 6,000 times the need of 15, and you get $400 a unit, which is probably a fair price for retail. I also know that through Apple, in their specific education program that they offer, you're able to get last year brand-new models for $100 less. In addition, they offer volume discounts. So that'd be something I'd encourage the district to look at, if you haven't already, I don't know. But this price is pure retail, which I know you can do better at. So I'm not suggesting cutting the quantity, I'm suggesting change your strategy a little bit.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of motion on line 734, equipment additional, a reduction of $2,176 for a new line total of $4,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstention? 7-0.
I don't know. Carrie, or?
Probably.
Who seconded it?
Was it me?
I think it was you,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else on page 7?
Item 738. What is the Fornax system and how old is the current one? What shape?
That's a great question for Director Bandersky. I couldn't answer either of them.
No motion?
We've had a lot of discussions over the past years on these FM systems, and my understanding is that they're truly needed for an audible, sensory.
But this is, I don't recall seeing the Phonak system designation before. They usually use older, so I'm assuming, you know what I mean? Say, replacement of older system for X.
Yeah, I don't know
So
what
with
Phonak
respect to the Phonak, I have no knowledge of what it means.
Never heard it in all the years either, so.
You know, I briefly looked at this, and it's consistently spent year over year. I'm not concerned with the amount here.
Anything else on page 7? Page 8? Page 9?
Yes, page 9, professional services, line 330. I'd like to make a motion to reduce it by $7,200 to $7,000.
Okay, there is a motion to reduce line 330 professional services by $7,200, leaving a new line total of $7,000.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
We did discuss this particular one in terms of whether this was a set contract or whether this is an as-required service.
Was the home-based collaborative counseling for the LMS student in that budget line last year?
I don't have that.
Do you have last year's budget?
I'll find
Hold
it.
up. Okay. If so, then that would make sense. If not, that would explain the increase, or the jump in this year's approved. You know what I mean? But if it was in last year's, if it was in the budget prior to, and it only totaled 5,200, then it would seem to be high. But if the additional 5,200 is the reason for
There it is, Bill.
that, then it would seem that it might not be that much too high. Does that make sense?
Bracken.
Wouldn't there be, so while they're looking that up, wouldn't there be a need today for the student as well? Or not necessarily?
Evaluation.
Student may not be there.
Because there's only been $987 spent.
Yeah, really, yeah, you'd have to go back to the 2014, wouldn't you, in order to find out?
Right.
Good point.
Yeah, it was in the last year.
Yeah, it
Wasn't that
was.
last year?
Yeah.
You don't have to happen to have the 14, do you? I can find it online.
The what?
I can find the 14
The
online.
original request for 2014 was $9,000. They spent $5,234.
So the difference is about the $5,000 differential?
Well,
Well,
I wish I had more information, but
Yeah.
that was my only thinking, that if going into the 15-year, the addition was a specific LMS student.
again, I don't disagree.
And I can't guarantee you that that's what it is. That's just the only thing that seems to make sense to me.
I just don't know why we've only spent $987 on.
And, right now, year-to-date for this year is less than $1,000.
Mhm.
and what we were told, or at least I have new next to counseling services for an out-of-district student, and that was for one student. That's the new piece.
Thank you. I appreciate folks taking the time to look this up and do our due diligence.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor of reduction to line 330, professional services of $7,200, leaving a new line total of $7,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So motion passes 630. Anything else on page 9? Page 10?
Page 10. Line 330, this is going into page 11, so I'll let anybody else speak first. If anybody else has any other motions. No? Okay, so on line 330, I'd like to make a motion to reduce that by $13,000 to $20,000.
Okay, the motion is to reduce by $13,000, leaving $20,000 as the new line total. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded, discussion?
Again, I sound like a broken record. 12-13, the budget and actual, we're right around $7,500. So you spent pretty much what you needed that year. 13-14, we budgeted 22, you actually spent 16. Looking in past years, this is just another area where it seems to be overfunded. Again, no suggestion that we need to reduce services or anything of the such. I think it's just an area where you're over budgeting.
Yeah, this is, again, an as-required service, and explanation exactly the same as last year as it is this year. And they don't wind up spending it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of reducing line 330 professional services by $13,000, leaving a new line total of $20,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
810. Page 11. Page 12.
On page 12, line 330, professional services, I'd like to make a motion to reduce it by $8,500 to a new line of $40,000.
Okay, there is a motion to reduce $8,500, leaving a new line total of $40,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Discussion?
Trying to make sense of this, and seeing the descriptions, and Bill, maybe you can check me if you have the last year's in front of you as well. Are the descriptions?
Same.
Yeah, they're the same. Average is 35,562, looking over a 4-year period. Whether that's true or a good number to use, again, we can debate that too.
Yeah, and again, it's the same description, and this year's approved budget is $34,000.
Yep.
This year's approved budget? It says,
The current year, the 2000, I'm sorry, yeah, 2014 budget. Got the wrong one.
I don't know what you're looking at right now.
2015 approved budget is
48, yeah.
48.5.
Yeah.
My only concern is that my notes say that there's 41,000 year-to-date encumbered and spent.
No, the year-to-date is 12,825, and they have encumbered 28,000, which means they anticipate spending 28.
Yeah, that's what,
Which would add to the
between
40.
encumbered and spent, it's 41,000.
41,600.
So that's my only thought.
So perhaps a reduction of 7,500 instead of 40,000. Just set it to 41 is more appropriate.
Based on my notes, I think that would be more appropriate. So I'll make a motion, it'd be easier if I didn't do it.
I'll make an amendment to that motion to reduce from the 48,500, a total of 7,500.
Okay, there's an amendment to reduce by 7,500, leaving a new line total of 41,000.
Okay. Bill's got it. Bill's good.
It's been made and seconded.
Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Bill.
And further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the motion for line 330 professional services for a reduction of 7,500, leaving a new line total of 41,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So it's 7-0, the amendment passes. So the main motion is now to reduce $7,500 to 330 professional services, leaving 41,000 in the line. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And abstain, so 7-0. Anything else on page 12?
It was 720.
720, yeah. Page 13.
On page 13, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the top item overtime 130 by $199, set it to $1.
Second.
Okay, it's been made and seconded, 130 overtime, a reduction of $199, leaving $1. Further discussion?
Never spent.
All right, all those in favor of a reduction 130 overtime of $199, leaving a new line total of $1, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
7-0, motion passes. Anything else on 13? 14?
Who wants to start? Anybody?
I don't know if it was.
Okay. I'll make a motion on 519 transportation to reduce it by $76,403.
76,403. Leaves a new line total, looks like 350.
Exactly.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
All right, it's been made and seconded. Discussion?
What?
Wow, go ahead.
Again, this one here is a significant increase over what the actuals show. In 2012-13, the budget was 297. We spent 271, so pretty close that year. In 13-14, we budgeted 337. We spent 246. In 2014-15, our year-to-date is 316,000. You know, I think when I look at this budget, similar to salaries and benefits, this is another key area where we're just way overspent, or way over budgeted, excuse me. And I think it's an area of opportunity to set it more in line with expectations and reality, which is why I've made this motion.
Just so I can understand this line, I know we talk about it every year, and I think the conversation is the same. I just want to make sure I'm describing it properly. When these are budgeted, it's budgeted as if
Worst case.
the run has to be by itself, but obviously, as the year goes on with diligence, cost savings. Sometimes you can combine runs, which is what which is why we're getting savings.
Yeah, combined runs typically, Nancy Cassidy works in the Director Van Dersche's office, is very good. All of the local districts try to get together as much as possible. Because of sped turnover, you really can't predict, so there is a little bit of budgeting in terms of, here's what would cost us with the runs, and then they try to accrue as much savings as they can. And typically, if it's a good year, then somebody's going from Alvern west of here, and they can stop by and pick someone up and away you go. It's not as predictable as we would like, but there's generally some savings there, yes.
Okay, so that's the explanation for, which has always been the same.
Yeah, I've tried to figure out where it shows up, and I mentioned on Tuesday, I thought I knew, and I was convinced it was all in the first student money. And then I said, maybe that isn't where it is, so I'm betwixt and between. Quick question. What is the midday run, preschool run? Why do we have two buses for that?
Well, we have two preschool sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon.
Okay.
So there would be a run in to take the students, and then another run that should come in. So you have two runs in and two runs out. So there's two runs.
And when does that, any idea when that takes place? I'm just curious, because I saw some buses flying by me at 12:30 today.
I don't know.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
I think they were probably going over to start the run because they were empty. I'll tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable with that number, Andrew. And I would offer to amend this to a different number, basically a $50,000 cut, which would be 37640.
Okay, now that's scary, because that's a number I had in mind.
403.
Quite honestly, I would be more comfortable with even that difference. It would.
All right, so are you making that
I am
motion to
moving
amend?
to amend
Second.
to 376,403.
Okay, the motion to amend has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, which is to reduce line 519 transportation by $50,000, leaving a new line total of $376,403, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
810. So the main motion is the reduction now of $50,000 for a new line total of $376,403. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So motion passes 810. So
But
the,
for the record, by my motion, I wasn't suggesting that we cut out some of these buses.
I understand.
No, did I make it when I made the whole head recommendation?
well, I think that is what Director Van Derske said, is she has to assume worst case, but then they work really hard during the year, and that's got to be why.
Just think of the public comment that we had earlier this
Yeah.
evening. They got the wrong information about how the cuts were made
Oh.
and why they were made.
All right, anything else on page 14? So, next is curriculum. Starting on page 1.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion on line 640, textbook replacement. I'd like to reduce that from 80,000. Actually, I didn't do the math, so give me 1 second. The motion's for 15,272. Let me get the difference.
15,272.
This is 64,728.
64,728. Thanks, Bill.
728. So the reduction of 15,272, leaving a line total of 64,728. Is there a second?
Well, second for discussion.
So of the information, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of the information that was provided, what specifically did that reduce?
So,
Yeah.
I looked at, and it's up to the committee how you want to do it. This is an area where I look across the entire budget, and I'm taking the cut here because it's the largest element across the entire budget. If you'd like to save it for January 8th and do a global reduction somewhere,
So you're doing all textbooks?
this reduction is across all is implied across all 640s, but being reduced here.
Okay, so it has nothing necessarily to do specifically with this 80,000?
Basically, a $15,000 cut in textbook replacement.
Of the
Allocated
120.
across the 3 schools, which would look like
Correct.
they were slightly overfunded, and you're probably looking at about a $10,000, I guess. Private schools in 10 years.
So 640s across the line, so just so we're clear on figures, right? This line is $80,000, as we all see. If you look at 640s across all lines, it's $125,272. What this reduction does, sets your number to $110,000 across all lines,
Which is more than we spent.
which is still a $12,000 increase.
I understand the rationale.
Yeah, because I agree. I think the rationale for the 80,000, that is where I had my questions. I think the rationale for the 80,000 made sense. But it did fuzz up what was going on at the other schools.
Correct.
So I agree that globally, that's a better number. That's
But it-
not reducing the new textbooks.
No, still way more
I
than what
was
they did
clear
last
that
year.
I was an advocate for the curriculum and everything that the director is trying to achieve. Very supportive of it. No,
No, that, I
challenge there.
appreciate that explanation, because the 80 I was okay with.
I agree, exactly. The 80 I'm okay with as well, and so, but I do agree that globally, that's the right number.
But this is the kind of item where they partially rolled it up, and it would be nice to see them either roll it all back up or put it back out in the schools.
Right.
I think after some conversation, we'll probably add a new number so that we can differentiate a little bit better.
Yeah.
So you can see. And the problem becomes textbook replacement. There's a very different category if you're getting 6 anthologies for a freshman reading class as opposed to, replacing existing grade 10 science books with another set of grade 10 science books. So it'll give more clarity to you guys and also be better for us in terms of our tracking. So I'm anticipating being in a better place with better information internally and also more transparency externally next year.
All right, any further discussion? So the motion is for a reduction of line 640 textbook replacement of $15,272, leaving a new line total of $64,728. And just to note that this is a global reduction, not specifically to the curriculum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And an abstain. 8-1-0, motion passes. Anything else on page 1? Page 2?
I'm done.
It's like you didn't know.
On page 2,
I'm done.
I would move line 271, course reimbursement union, from 44,640 to 4,200,
I'm sorry.
42,000, excuse me.
Okay, so it's a reduction of $2,640,
Right.
leaving a new line total of $42,000. Is there a second?
Second.
And all I'm doing is trying to reflect what we've actually been spending versus what the contract calls for.
All right. Any further discussion?
I want to do
My
something.
fear is we would be open to an unfair labor practice claim. Says we'll put it in the budget.
Yep.
It costs us more than legal fees.
Right. Bottom line.
Yeah, it's in the budget. And hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of a reduction to 271 course reimbursement of $2,640, leaving a new line total of $42,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So 7-0, motion passes.
And line 320, I would move from $22,320 to $20,000.
So a reduction of $2,320, leaving a new line total of $20,000. It's been made and seconded.
Same rationale.
Alrighty. Any further discussion? All those in favor of a reduction to line 320 in district professional development, a reduction of $2,320, leaving a new line total of $20,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
I was also going to propose a reduction to 270 until I listen to Dr. Cochran and how he plans on using this money.
I'm sorry?
You basically have your 270 money committed, as I understood what you said.
Younger administrators taking courses, yeah.
Which, the 13th? Oh, yes, yeah.
They told us basically what they were
That's
anticipating taking
what you
courses.
told me, that
So
it
we
looks
were
like
at
that's a
that.
good number. So I'm-
Actually, if you summed up the commitments that are in the contract, it would be, since this is a 4-credit UNH rate, it would actually be $84,000, which is, but we've not had that demand. Right now, I would expect that we'll exceed requests in that again next year.
No, I'm all set.
Alrighty, anything else on page 2? Page 3? The end.
Okay, page 3.
Oh, page 3, maybe not.
Andrew, do you have anything?
I'm done.
Andrew said he was done early.
Oh, okay. well,
Bye, Bill.
Let me
you, Bill.
figure out what I have here. Okay. Line 320,
There's 2 of them, so which one are you talking about?
in district professional development, line 320, the last one.
I agree with
Okay, for Campbell?
I'd move from 4,000 to 3,500. Reduction of $500.
So a reduction of $500, leaving a new line total of $3,500. Is there a
Yeah.
second?
Second.
Seconded, multiple.
And all I'm doing, I looked at what we spend on this account, and I'm saying level funded, which is still more than we've been spending.
Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, what account was that? That was on.
It's the last one on page 3.
320.
320.
And the,
To level fund.
to level fund it, my notes say that this is for there's a lot more curriculum writing going on, so this is substitutes so that they can pull those teachers out to do the curriculum writing. So I have a feeling, because this is a new thing, that's why it's bumped up a little.
Could
Hearing
check
none-
and see if the words are the same in last year's budget.
Are they?
I don't know, I said I could check.
I don't know if it is or not, I don't know.
I'm
if
not
it
gonna
is or
bother
not.
with $500
I know.
then.
Yeah, all those in favor of a reduction to 320 in district professional development, reduction of $500, leaving a new line total of $3,500, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes 5-4-0. And that brings us to the end, unless there's one last one. All right. That is the end of the school budget. In January, we will be voting on warrants and making any final reductions based on the MS 27. So when we get closer and I get all the numbers in, I'll be sending out what that looks like today, and then we can use that to make any further changes.
272 and 580 global?
Were we gonna do that in January or tonight?
I don't have it on the agenda. I think that we
What
were
was the
gonna
question?
do it for January.
272 and 580.
You
I'm
can-
happy to do
Is
it.
he gonna look at it and then we can talk about it and make a decision?
Did you have updates?
You can do that without.
I have some information to
Okay,
add
great.
to it. My concern is that if we go through and forget this, then
We're not gonna
Okay.
forget.
we're not going to be able to have the conversation.
Okay. Did you have additional information?
I know.
No, we could have a conversation. I mean, I have some information about where our needs will be.
So I'm happy to share where I'm thinking. We made a reduction tonight in conference and workshops. I was originally thinking 5,000, as I shared. I'm now thinking 3,000 after that reduction. And that's spread across all the lines. For travel, my number's right around $8,500. That's what I'm prepared to move. And again, I think it's just high. It's the same conversation we had last year where I think it's just over budgeted based upon true need. And please.
What sort of number were you looking at?
So for 16, you had 46,843, no, missed a line. You had 47,343.
Yeah.
In 14, you spent 33,358.
Right.
In 15, you are budgeting 44,000. I don't know, I haven't looked up your actuals.
13, my first year here, we spent I have 36,872.
36,872, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so this is setting it to 38,843. The reduction of 8,500.
Is that 580 or 272?
This is 580.
So you're looking for a reduction of 8,500?
Yep.
I'm sorry, did you have an amount?
What was the question?
I was just wondering if you had a proposed reduction.
The proposed reduction for 580 is $8,500.
And you said you were going to come back with a...
I think that's actually pretty close. What I'm thinking is, if you look back to 2013, we have about the same number of people, the same amount of travel. We have an additional conference. It would be a second trip for our HR director to the conference on the ERP system, which she's still ramping up on. So I'm thinking we would be in the 39 plus 40 range to be able to offer, that same piece.
So, I mean,
yeah,
I can make a motion for 7,500 and be completely comfortable.
Let's do it.
Are we still in voting? I'm confused as to where we are on
I
our
thought we were
agenda.
just gaining information.
I think, what's the will of the committee?
I'd
I'd
like
like
to
to
get it
vote
out of the way.
Yeah, me too.
All right, we can do that then?
Okay, so I will make a motion to reduce 580s on a global basis by $7,500.
The motion has been made to reduce 580s on a global basis by 7,500. Is there a second?
And what is that, no,
Can we put it someplace?
what is that?
Because the problem is when we do MS 27, it's got to be spread across different function codes.
Yeah. And there's no one spot that's big enough to absorb it all at once. So I can spread it out over 2 or 3 lines.
Anything in district-wide?
Yep.
So we can put a negative, if there's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
district-wide, I think that would be easier. than we-
Look, I can take it out of 2 district-wides. There's a, let me just tell you the account number.
still on 580?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out where to reduce it. Let's take it 7,000. Yeah,
So 121.
Could be a negative number.
1201.
At least it'll be your cuts and it'll be
Sorry,
placeholders.
it's 1201,
Yep,
580,
580,
and then 2332, 580.
2332, 580.
So those two combined right now equal $8,950.
You're in district-wide?
Yeah. I don't have the pages. I'm looking at a spreadsheet. But we can find it.
1201, and what was the second one?
1201, 580, and 2332, 580, which combined are $8,950.
That's for you, Bill.
Oh, God.
Of what?
Yeah, it's in there for you.
So 1201. I don't think so. It's not there.
So the easiest way to do it would just take the business and finance and
Just do a
make it a negative number.
Fine.
Does that make sense? Frank's out of here now.
I want to do whatever's easiest for you.
I mean, they'll have to wind up spreading it anyway. Looking at Dr. Cochran, you can't?
If you can find a couple of placeholders to distribute it across, so we don't have to use negative numbers, it
Okay.
might be a little easier.
Right, I think they did that.
Did you find it?
7,500, yeah,
So if
I don't
we,
know, I gotta find it in the book, I don't know where
I was
that
gonna say, so if we look at SAU,
Yeah.
and under SAU,
Yeah.
their travel is 4,000. So if we make a negative number there,
But you said we gotta have two.
SAU travel.
Well,
Well,
he's
then
saying
you
he'd prefer
have
not to have a negative number.
okay.
So why don't we go in and
One.
make reductions in the two SAU accounts?
Yeah.
The district administration and the business and finance, and they both
Yeah.
at
$4,000.
$4,000, so that's 8, and you're making a $7,000 cut, so make each of them $500. Did I
You
do
could have
that?
somebody 2 years from now look back and say, how did you budget for negative travel? 7,500 cut, right?
Okay, I,
7,100 is the cut, we're trying to figure out where to put it.
That's right.
All right.
Bill just said,
Subway bills?
so,
you said 7, right? It's 75.
Oh, I, so
So
it's
you'd have-
75,
7,500.
So you'd have to make each 250.
then 250?
so,
You'll make both those lines 250, yeah? That happen this time?
no, they're different. One,
Yeah, one is 49.50.
yeah, they're different, so, it's a reduction of $3,750 from each of those lines.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
All right, so, let's start with, all right, so SAU, page 1, 580 travel,
SAU, page 1.
a reduction of $3,750, leaving a new line total of $500. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of 580 travel, a reduction of $3,750, leaving a new line total of $500, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passes.
I just want to be clear, 3,750,
Yep,
and the budget's 4,000.
yep. Leaving
250.
250. My, yep. 250. Motion passes 8-1-0. So then flipping a couple of pages to business finance, and that is on page 2, reduction to 580 travel of $3,750. My brain's tired, leaving $1,050 for the new line total. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Make sure my math is correct.
Yep.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing 580 travel by $3,750 for a new line total of $1,050 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
So it's 7-0.
Okay.
All right, so that is the 580 account. How do you want to do the,
Excuse me, can I just ask a question?
yep,
The line that you're reducing, the total is 49.50, correct? The original total was a 40, or was it less?
$4,800 is
I'm
what I
sorry.
have
Okay.
on page 2.
I got you, okay, I had the wrong one.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
That's all right. So 272 account globally, you said you had, wanted to propose
3,000.
3,000, so we can also do that. Poor Frank. Make sure he understands, this is not his office
Oh, no,
that's
I'm
getting a
not
reduction.
explaining a single thing.
Again, I don't want people to say, oh my gosh, they decimated the budget, finance office.
Hit it again.
This
They're
is a
gonna say
global thing, we're just looking for pots of money that we can take it out of. So on page 1, 272 conferences, workshop, The line right now stands at $5,185. So the proposal is to reduce another $3,000 globally, taking it from this account.
Yes, please.
All right, I will make that motion, leaving behind $2,185 as the new line total.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Everybody understands what we're doing? All right, all those in favor of a reduction of line 272, conferences and workshops, a reduction of $3,000, leaving a new line total of $2,185, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Any abstaining? So 7-0, motion passes. Business, finance, page
Business
one.
finance, okay. That's what I was, okay.
So let me make sure I.
I just want to do
have-
it right. Yes, okay. Yeah, that's it.
So I want to make sure
It's
that
coming.
I mark that, so it's there, and there. All right. So that, yeah, that'll make it easier going forward. All right,
Just as an update, Madam Chairman, so with tonight's reductions in special education curriculum, my total, and you guys can check me after the fact, is 175,452. With the additions of travel and conference of workshops, tonight's reductions total $185,952. And then taking into consideration the reductions that were presented,
previously.
yeah, previously, 696,620, we're at a grand total of 882,572.
72. Okay.
Please correct me if I'm mistaken.
Yep, I'll go through it tomorrow. All right. Member input, new business, one of that I asked to be.
272?
882,572.
572.
I'm sorry?
What was your question?
Did we do the global on 272?
Yes.
Yes, yep.
Budgeted, allocated, done.
I thought we were still on the reduction of the 580, I'm sorry.
580 is done.
580 is done, we made a motion.
What was the motion on 272?
The motion on 272 was,
Reduce $3,000.
$3,000 reduction.
Okay, thank you.
When I was listening to the school board meeting, it appeared to me that they have a deliberative session date, so I wanted to find out from both the town and the school what those dates are and the timing of them. If
Town's January 31st,
Jan-
10 o'clock.
January 31st at 10 o'clock. Okay. And
I
the-
would have thought Frank would have,
31st.
no, we probably decided, Kevin probably should have passed the message along when he came earlier this week, so.
Okay. And I gathered that the school district is February 7th.
Correct.
At what time?
It's
10
10 o'clock.
o'clock.
Also 10 o'clock. Okay.
Thank you.
And what was the second date?
February 7th at 10 o'clock and January 31st at 10 o'clock. Those are our deliberative session dates. Now I can start to plan my life out.
I can already tell you that I'm not going to be at the town, so I'm going to be out of town.
Okay. Any other member input, new business? Hearing none, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Just something I was thinking about last evening, and again, if you're saying that I I'm not sure exactly what to say, if I didn't represent some of the conversations we had here. One of the things that I thought of last evening, or the last meeting, is similar to a school board member being at these meetings all the time, and a selectman being at these meetings all the time. I think it might be a good idea to, as a budget committee, either appoint one person, or even on a rotating basis, that a budget committee member sit in on the selectmen meetings and sit in on the school board meetings. I know Andrew had said earlier in this whole process how we came about some of the numbers, and I think if a member was sitting, and you even said that, you know, you'd like to like be there to see how they were formulated, it might be a good idea to have a member from the budget committee on those two committees on a regular basis.
I happen to agree. I think that's very important. However, the RSA doesn't allow for an appointment of a budget committee member, an official capacity to go. But I certainly agree with you 100%. If you don't go to meetings.
And I'm not even saying officially, but just even being in the audience.
I think they should, absolutely. I think we should all know what's going on in the other meetings. I do think that is important. And just like I said to the school board, I think it's important that they watch the budget committee meetings.
Yeah.
So they know how some of the decision-making came to be. So I do agree with the premise.
And I think if there were a budget committee meeting, budget committee member at the meetings, that a lot of the questions right now that probably wouldn't be asked because you can come back and share that information.
Yeah, and I apparently had no life when I was younger, although I don't know how, because I had 3 small children. I remember when I was a school board member, when the school board budget was presented, every single school board member would be sitting in the audience to see what was going on. When the school district, we had, this cycle, we had Mr. Leichleiter come back the second night when he knew his budget was going to be voted on. It used to be that every department came back the second night, so when there were questions, they could be answered. And I don't know if it's a sign of the times that we've all just gotten busier and can't do that, or it's unrealistic, but I'm kind of disappointed that, and maybe it's because we're on TV and people are out there watching it on TV, but it doesn't seem that way. I'm kind of disappointed not to have more staff come the second night for voting, and I'm kind of disappointed that more of the members of the school board also don't come and support you, because it is hard for one person to bring it all back and accurately, and then people build up in their mind what they think they heard, and so I'm kind of disappointed, for what it's worth.
And, I want to say also, now that we're on the subject, it's, the process is there, and I know a lot of people, and I'm not talking elected people now, I guess I'm talking general, anybody that's watching. They don't take advantage of the process as it's laid out. It is a great process because, and I keep going back to Mr. Leichleiter, because there were some motions that were pulled based upon further rationale. He fought and defended for his budget. It's not easy, but the questions weren't easy either. The answers aren't easy, but the decisions are better. And the same thing would happen if the concerned people that in the town come out and ask the questions or state their concern. This is the place to do it. Then the next place to do it is the budget hearing. That is another very important piece which nobody shows up for. What disappoints me is that the people are rallied to show up at the deliberative. And to me, that should be left as a last resort. If you go through the process step by step and you still don't get satisfaction, as any one person feels whatever the satisfaction is, then you go to deliberative. But unfortunately, deliberative, some of the changes made are made without facts, background, justification, rationale, discussion, or anything. It's usually based on emotion or who is somebody going to follow. And that's what's disappointing to me, because the process is out there. Now, look, I'll blame myself and all of us here. Maybe we're not doing the job getting the word out, because we got to look deep at ourselves first. So let's just keep getting the word out there.
So actually, that then makes me think, would this committee like me to submit something to HLN as a letter to the editor, asking the community to come to our sessions, some of the hard, and I would run it by all of you so that you could see, and say, whatever, come to the hearings.
I would definitely like to hear that, a good letter, and maybe the editor of HLN will give you even a special spot or a,
oh gosh,
as opposed to just, no, seriously, no, in all seriousness, maybe it could be elaborated on a little bit more than just a letter to the editor, and that's, I think, worth the asking. Some people probably don't realize the tools at their disposal, like these meetings and budget hearing. That's a very important one. Like I said, the deliberative is there. It's a useful tool, it's legal, they're allowed to use it, but that should be the absolute last resort, in my opinion.
What were you thinking about, Cindy, in terms of?
Just letting people know there's a hearing, why it would be important to come. We've made X reductions to the town, X reductions to the school. We really feel that there's some, we would like some serious.
So you talk about some of the numbers that are in there. Makes a lot of sense, awful lot of sense. We have not done that in many, many years, and really, the public deserves that. They ought to know what kind of number we're talking about, why we got where we got to. And I'm sure the school will come in with their own, I'm sure, thing. We need this, we need that, and that's fine. But at least it gets out there much better than the 50 people that show up at the little.
And I don't, and it's not just happened at the school, it happened at the town as well. I hate it when there's a misunderstanding of like, oh my gosh! And in fact, it ends up being so much more simpler than by the time it goes through that, the old telephone game where he said, she said down the line, and now it doesn't resemble what it originally, was. And so I just feel like as much information as we can get out there so that people, come and hear it for themselves.
Well, the school board has, displayed their displeasure with the decreases they've been having. Let's hear from the public on their increased taxes that they hired or voted us in to try to factor, I guess you can call it. I mean, something's gotta give somewhere. I mean, it's gone up every year. That's why I'm here.
We're playing a new game with old tools.
I know, but
That hit
that's
social media
honestly
yesterday.
that's why I tried to get on budget committee. I was like, where's all this going? Because it's gone up every year that I lived here. I'm giving it an honest effort. I'm trying, I'm learning still, but, it's,
Not so much, I'm not even talking about the results or the numbers or the dollars for one point of it. Cindy, if you can get the point across that good, honest people could have disagreements with a result, but it doesn't mean that they have an agenda, or they're nefarious, or they're bad or uncaring. So the point is, good people is the point we got to get across. Use facts, rationale, and then after all of that, if you disagree, well, then you disagree. That's very important, as far as I'm concerned.
But even explaining sometimes the process of getting something to discussion, if you don't make a motion and have a second, you can't even discuss it. So sometimes it does look like you don't care. But you have to bring it up so everybody gets all the facts, right?
It's about the process, and a lot of people, I think, don't really understand the process.
All righty then. Anything else? We have a second community input.
you guys all set?
Yeah. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
10 o'clock.
I know, we're back to getting earlier and
Half a
earlier.
day.
I know, right?
Merry Christmas.
That's right. Christmas is next. Oh my gosh, Christmas is
Have
a
a
week from
happy
tonight.
or terrible New Year.
Did you ever catch up with Linda?
Yeah.
Now that we're off the air, I have to congratulate you on your final transition from being a school board member to a budget committee member, because you took the brunt. What we've taken for years and years and years.
By the way, Billy's still on camera. No, I'm only kidding.
And see, that's to me what's so funny. Those are the same cuts that I